cultivation world, I begin by getting struck by lightning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1126. Is this guy a monster? Although the Black Mountain base fortress has gathered hundreds of thousands of monks, this is a tragic battle between the realms, and they are still facing the endless monsters in the netherworld. In addition, the netherworld is a place without spirits, and the monks of Mangutian are equivalent to fighting away from home. The monks at the forefront of the Black Mountain base can only take boosting pills to replenish their mana, but this thing also has limitations, and taking too much will lose its effect. Therefore, the monks on the wall of the Black Mountain base fortress are almost fighting for their lives. It has only been 2 days of fierce fighting, and more than 30% of the hundreds of thousands of monks in the Black Mountain base fortress have been lost. According to the experience of previous catastrophes, the next 1 or 2 days of fighting will be the most tragic. The next day is another difficult day. The endless cannon fodder army in the netherworld has no intention of stopping at all, and is still attacking frantically. Today, even Su Fan took action several times, which resolved the crisis on the wall. Xiaoning also led people to put out fires on the walls of the fortress. She was so desperate that she threw out all kinds of 9th-level immortal talismans without paying. In any case, the Black Mountain base fortress survived another day. But Su Fan and Xiaoning knew in their hearts that the next day would be the most critical moment of this war. At this moment, countless monks from the Mangutian were busy and nervous around the 3 space gaps in the netherworld. At least several lines of defense were established around each gap, and monks from all over the Mangutian were deployed on these lines of defense. Not only that, countless monks from the Luotian star domain and even support forces from various star domains of the Yuan Moji were racing against time to rush to the Mangutian. Since the top leaders of the Mangutian sent out a request for help, the monks of the entire Yuan Moji were all scared. No one expected that this time when the catastrophe came, 3 space gaps would appear in the netherworld. This also means that the power of Mangutian alone is simply unable to cope with the invasion of the netherworld. Once the netherworld occupies Mangutian, the cultivators of the entire Yuan Moji will not be able to rest for the next few decades or hundreds of years. In the main base of the Black Mountain fortress, thousands of fusion realm masters from various tribes of Mangutian are sitting cross-legged outside the base's teleportation array. Now the Black Mountain fortress has completely lost contact with the outside world. Although the hope of defending the Black Mountain base is extremely slim, preparations for rescue must be made. Now outside the 3 space gaps in the netherworld, there are thousands of fusion realm masters from various tribes, guarding outside the teleportation hall, ready to teleport over for support at any time. At this time, several late-stage fusion masters are standing beside the teleportation hall with serious eyes, waiting anxiously. Now we just hope that Black Mountain base can create a miracle. Before the space gap appeared, the little girl of the Xiao family called all the monks from the various bases below back to the base to gather together. Black Mountain base still has hope. It's useless to just defend the base. We have to destroy the teleportation gate of the netherworld. Yes, even if we defend the base, if the netherworld successfully builds the Starry Sky Gate, even if we go to support, it will be useless. In fact, these top bosses of Mangutian are not optimistic about the situation in the 3 gaps. In fact, they don't have much hope of defending Mangutian. There is no way. This time the netherworld has opened up 3 space gaps. Mangutian alone is unable to cope with the invasion of the netherworld. In fact, the entire Mangutian is full of gloomy atmosphere from top to bottom. Although all the star regions of the Metal Demon realm have sent out support, due to the extremely long distance, by the time the support from all the star regions arrives at Mangutian, it may be too late. At this time, the battle in the Black Mountain base fortress has reached a fever pitch, and the battle is becoming more and more tragic. Su Fan stood on the highest wall of the Black Mountain base fortress, completely released with spiritual sense, and kept scanning around. Hey! He finally found a suspicious place, where a large number of various monsters gathered. It is clear that it must be the place where the netherworld built the Starry Sky Gate. However, what puzzled Su Fan was why the monsters in the netherworld only built 1 Starry Sky Gate this time. This time, the netherworld has obviously strengthened its vigilance, and there are thousands of 8th level monsters alone. Uncle Master, the netherworld has started to build the starry sky gate again. After receiving a thought from Su Fan, Xiaoning couldn't help but frown. Is this guy a monster? The spiritual sense strength of a cultivator in the transformation realm is actually stronger than her in the refining void realm. I will organize people to cooperate with your action, no need. This time the Nether Star Domain only built one starry sky gate. I can handle it myself. After receiving Su Fan's thoughts, Xiaoning suddenly felt something was wrong. Is there something fishy about the Nether realm? It can't be a trap, waiting for you to come and fall into the trap. Su Fan didn't take Xiaoning's words seriously at all. This is really not his bragging. Except for the 9th level demon from the Nether realm, the remaining 7th level and 8th level demons are nothing in his eyes. It's okay, at worst I can just run away. If he wanted to escape, those 8th level demons in the Nether realm couldn't stop him at all. You must be careful. The demons in the Nether realm are much more difficult to deal with than our human cultivators, and all kinds of gloomy and strange methods emerge in an endless stream. Don't worry, I will pay attention. I'll go over now. After sending this thought, Su Fan's figure disappeared on the city wall, and then drove the ghost crow out of the Black Mountain base fortress. Although after several battles, Su Fan no longer took the 8th level monsters of the netherworld seriously. However, the thought that Xiaoning just sent still made him alert, so he was more careful this time. Su Fan drove the ghost crow to the sky above a mountain and found a flat place to land. A valley dozens of miles ahead is where the netherworld built the starry sky gate. Because the evil secret technique Blood Moon Reversal Yin and Yang concealment method can no longer be hidden from the detection of the monsters in the netherworld. He did not go there blindly. Now it is unlikely for Su Fan to lurk in. He can only take the form of a surprise attack to kill directly in and destroy the starry sky gate of the netherworld. Anyway, Su Fan can easily pass through the defense barrier of the netherworld, so his idea is to kill in one breath and directly destroy the starry sky gate. There is something urgent that needs to be dealt with in the evening, so there is only one chapter today. Chapter 1127 Fat Devil and Wicker Ghost. It was already early morning. For most of the next night, Su Fan had been hiding nearby, patiently waiting for the altar in the valley to be built. It was not that he was arrogant, but he did it on purpose. If Su Fan came here and immediately destroyed the unfinished altar, it would give the monsters in the netherworld enough time to prepare. Judging from the previous altars in the netherworld, the preparation time was about half a day. It was already early morning. If Su Fan destroyed the altar before dawn, he would buy a day for the Black Mountain base. However, his plan was probably not completed because Xiaoning sent him a thought. Why haven't you done it yet? Su Fan received Xiaoning's thought, so he told him his idea, but the other party didn't buy it at all. Hurry up and do it, the base fortress is about to collapse. Su Fan was also a little confused. Although the battle in the base fortress was fierce before he came out, it was mostly safe. Who would have thought that he had just been out for most of the night, and the Black Mountain base fortress was about to collapse? So Su Fan knew that he couldn't wait any longer. If he waited any longer, the fortress of the Black Mountain base would not be able to be defended. It should be that the monsters in the netherworld increased the intensity of their attacks. If he delayed any longer, his home might be stolen by others. Thinking of this, Su Fan sent a thought to the big boss of the upper realm of the Witch Gate. Senior, help me to raise my realm to the highest level. As soon as his thought was sent, a blood-colored light column fell from the sky and completely enveloped his figure. Su Fan's body also appeared densely packed with blood-colored witch patterns, forming a blood-colored witch formation with him as the center. Then, he activated the demon body again, and instantly a demon body hundreds of feet tall rose from the ground. As Su Fan thought, a big sword suddenly appeared in his hand, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. When his figure appeared again, it had swept across more than 100 miles like thunder and lightning. Su Fan held a demon-breaking sword and passed through more than 10 defensive barriers arranged by the netherworld in one breath, and appeared directly above the valley. At this time, the altar in the valley had been built and was now in the final stage. The Starry Sky Gate was about to be activated. Su Fan didn't think about it, and jumped directly into the air and slashed with a fierce sword. Zhang, only a sword chant that reached the sky and the earth was heard, and it instantly resounded through the void. The shrill and piercing sword chant shook the surrounding space and emitted a violent tremor visible to the naked eye. A sword light seemed to be born from nothingness, tearing the space and the darkness in an instant. The sword light passed through the void, carrying an indescribable and mysterious artistic conception. Everything was like an antelope hanging on a horn, ignoring the traces, and even without the slightest smell of fireworks, but in a flash, it revealed a mysterious and unpredictable artistic conception of the avenue. This was Su Fan's most powerful sword that he could use so far. Even though there were thousands of 8th level monsters from the netherworld in the valley, he believed that this sword could not only destroy the altar, but also take away these 8th level monsters with one sword. At this time, a huge meatball over 100 feet high instantly blocked the front of the altar, and endured Su Fan's sword. Boom! The terrifying sword light containing the artistic conception of the great Dao actually slashed on the huge meatball, making a loud sound that shook the earth. However, after enduring such a powerful sword, the meatball was not split in half by the sword. Moreover, the meatball was trembling violently all over, like the ripples of the lake, dividing and absorbing all the power of the sword. Su Fan didn't expect this to happen. The terrifying destructive power of the sword he exerted with all his strength was dissipated just like that. Until this time, he finally guessed the origin of this huge meatball. Isn't this huge meatball the fat round demon? That's not right. The fat round demon is clearly a 9th level demon from the netherworld. How did it pass through the gap in space? And judging from the aura of this fat round demon, it is now at most an 8th level demon. At this time, a thick demonic smoke suddenly filled the area around the altar, and 4 demons over 100 feet tall appeared from the air. These demons that appeared were like thick tree stumps, densely covered with tentacles like willow branches. Wicker Ghost. This is also a 9th level demon Wicker Ghost. Su Fan suddenly understood that these high-level demons from the netherworld were also very cruel. I don't know what means they used to forcibly lower the realm of these 9th level demons and let them hide in the valley, just to deal with me. Although the realms of these fat round demons and wicker ghosts have been lowered, their magical powers have not been reduced at all. The high-level officials of the netherworld should have realized his threat, so they sent 2 9th level monsters of lower realms to set this trap for themselves. Pa! Pa! At this time, with a series of sharp and crisp sounds, the dense tentacles on several huge tree stumps whipped towards him like willow branches. Visible phantoms suddenly appeared in the air, whistling towards Su Fan. The dense phantoms filled the sky with a gloomy and terrifying chill. If you get hit by this, you will probably be injured if not dead. At this time, simply dodging would seem passive, so Su Fan simply slashed with his sword again. Who would have thought that the fat round demon would once again stand in front of several willow twig ghosts, and the huge meatball over 100 feet high was covered with the waves of flesh. The fat round demon used its own advantages to once again break down Su Fan's powerful sword. This is fucking. Su Fan was almost pissed off to death. This big meatball was so annoying. Suddenly, he had an idea and finally came up with a plan to deal with the fat demon. Thinking of this, Su Fan's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. When his figure appeared again, he had come to the side of the fat demon, then raised the demon-breaking sword and slammed it into the fat demon's body. The fat demon was famous for his strong body. He just blocked Su Fan's sword with his body, and the strength of his body was evident. Seeing the demon-breaking sword thrown into his body, the fat demon hurriedly shook the flesh waves all over his body. Unfortunately, before it could launch its magical powers, it felt that its vitality was being constantly devoured by the big sword. Chapter 1128. Even Su Fan is jealous. Hiss, hiss, the fat round demon began to shake its huge body desperately, and its whole body suddenly turned into a raging wave of flesh. It wanted to throw the big sword inserted into its body out of its body, but it was too late now. After a while, the huge flesh ball of the fat round demon began to shrink slightly. The 4 willow ghosts around saw that the huge body of the fat round demon began to shrink, and hurriedly controlled the dense willow branches to whip Su Fan frantically. Su Fan sneered, then took out a 9th level protective J talisman from the ring, slapped it hard on his body, and instantly a spiritual shield rose up to cover him. Crackle, countless tentacles like willow branches slapped the spiritual shield hard. Su Fan thought, and the violent thunder and positive pull in his body instantly surged out of his body, and then rushed into the body of the fat round demon along the big sword. The Yang Di Shen and the Heaven Thunder are specially designed to defeat all kinds of demons, not to mention the demons from the netherworld with the more yin energy. The body of the fat round demon was like a boiling pot, and it started to make a violent noise. In addition, the demon-breaking sword was also madly devouring the vitality of the fat round demon. After a while, it began to hiss like a heart-wrenching roar. Hiss, hiss, Facing the miserable fat round demon, Su Fan could not give it any chance, and raised his sword fiercely. Puff! Su Fan cut the fat round demon of more than 100 feet in size into two halves with one sword. It was dead and could not die anymore. He collected the two halves of the fat round demon corpse on the ground. The skin of this guy is very precious. There is a chance to refine a body-protecting magic weapon in the future. Just now, the opponent's flesh was surging all over, and he had completely neutralized the power of his sword. To be honest, even Su Fan was jealous of this kind of supernatural power. Boom! At this time, the spiritual shield covering Su Fan finally exploded. The four willow ghosts controlled willow-like tentacles, which covered him. Su Fan's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, and when he appeared again, he had already escaped to the side of a willow ghost. Puff! He stabbed the willow ghost with a sword, but the other party didn't care and wrapped all the tentacles around him. Not good. Su Fan cursed in his heart and wanted to struggle out of these tentacles. But before he could move, the three willow ghosts next to him also controlled willow-like tentacles, and entangled Su Fan and the willow demon together. As the tentacles entangled one by one, Su Fan was finally entangled like a cocoon. They knew that this would accelerate the death of the willow ghost, but they didn't care about the life and death of their own people, so they simply entangled Su Fan and the fellow tribesmen into a cocoon. Su Fan struggled desperately, but he was already entangled with the willow ghost, and no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't move. What made him most anxious was that the altar not far away had been activated. Boom! With a violent buzzing sound, a huge space gate had risen from the ground. Looking at the starry sky gate on the altar next to him rising into the sky, Su Fan was also anxious. If he didn't struggle out of the bondage of the willow ghost, and wait until the 9th level demon from the netherworld came out of the starry sky gate, then this battle would really be lost. At this moment, the yin god in Su Fan's body suddenly gathered together and turned into a human-shaped black shadow, with 7 halos circling around the black shadow. Huh? Su Fan suddenly felt a stream of energy pouring into his limbs and bones, and felt that he was full of endless power at this time. Ouch! He roared towards the sky, and a colorful breath suddenly spread all over his body, and then turned into 7 halos circling around him. Boom! Su Fan didn't know where the great power came from, and he actually broke all the dense tentacles of the 4 willow ghosts. The tentacles like willow branches suddenly turned into broken pieces of meat flying all over the sky. The 3 willow ghosts seemed to be thrown into the sky by an unimaginable mighty force, and then fell heavily to the ground. Su Fan, who broke free from the restraints, turned around and looked at the huge starry sky gate that soared into the sky next to him, and slashed it with a sword. The mysterious power of the law twisted the surrounding space, and the invisible ripples oscillated in all directions, and whistled down like a tide. A sword light flashed, and the extremely majestic breath of destruction almost shattered the void. The space rippled like a mirror, and dense spider web-like cracks spread all over the sky. The sword light instantly slashed at the space gate, and a huge explosion occurred. The aftermath of the explosion formed a world-destroying annihilation force, sweeping around like a terrifying hurricane, swallowing up everything within a radius of hundreds of miles. The countless ghosts from the netherworld in the entire valley were instantly turned into dust. After the dust and smoke cleared, not to mention the starry sky gate, even the valley had disappeared, leaving behind a deep gully that was more than 100 miles long. Moreover, the countless ghosts from the netherworld in the valley were also mostly turned into dust. Su Fan killed 3 more willow ghosts and put their corpses into the ring. This is at least a corpse of a 9th level demon, which can be used to make materials for high-level magic weapons in the future, or sold for a good price. Su Fan took another look at the miserable state of the valley, and then summoned the ghost crow from his secret realm. He jumped onto its back, and then rode it away. I have successfully destroyed the starry sky gate of the netherworld. You hold on, I will return to the base fortress soon. After receiving Su Fan's thoughts, Xiaoning couldn't help but let out a long sigh. This guy is finally back. If he doesn't come back, the Black Mountain base fortress may really fall. Come back soon. The netherworld has actually sent several 9th level demons whose realms have been forced to be lowered. The base fortress is already in danger. After receiving Xiaoning's thoughts, Su Fan was also confused. I didn't expect the monsters in the netherworld to be so cruel that they actually suppressed the realms of so many 9th level demons. If it were Barbarian Bone Sky, it would be unimaginable. Forcibly suppressing the realm of the 9th level demon, it is estimated that the 9th level demon must have paid a heavy price. Chapter 1129. I didn't expect this guy to be such a tough guy. When Su Fan drove the ghost crow back to the Black Mountain base fortress, he was immediately shocked by the scene in front of him. He saw endless monsters from the netherworld, which had surrounded the Black Mountain base fortress as far as the eye could see. Even the sky was completely occupied by dense flying monsters, which simply covered the sky and the sun. Su Fan observed and found a direction with the most critical situation. Then he put the ghost crow into his personal secret realm and jumped down from the sky. During the fall, he had already activated his demonized body. Boom! With a loud sound that shook the earth, the huge demon body hundreds of feet high had already fallen into the dense group of monsters. It directly crushed a large number of monsters into meat paste, and the huge impact force shook the surrounding monsters everywhere. Su Fan thought, and a big sword appeared in his hand, and then he used his right foot as the axis and swung the demon-breaking sword in a full circle. Whirlwind slash, a flash of sword light passed by, and a violent hurricane instantly formed within a radius of hundreds of miles. This mighty force filled with a mysterious Dao and the law overturned the entire world like a tide, rolling wildly in all directions. This sword light, which contained the artistic conception of the great Dao, suppressed the 9 heavens and 10 earths with its strong aura. The monsters within a radius of several miles were instantly turned into powder, and endless blood and flesh were scattered all over the sky. The originally densely packed monsters were wiped out by his sword. Ouch! At this time, a shrill roar came from a distance, and a huge monster over 100 feet tall suddenly fell from the sky and roared towards him. The appearance of this monster was very terrifying, as if it was made up of a pile of broken bones. Although it had the aura of an 8th level monster, Su Fan recognized the monster's footsteps at a glance. This demon was called Bone Crusher Demon. From the broken bones on its body, it was clear that it was a 9th level demon. The 9th level Bone Crusher Demon had extremely strong defense, especially with various magical powers that were good at close combat. But Su Fan was not afraid at all. After all, his current realm was the late stage of the refining void realm. With his strength, it was not a big deal to deal with a 9th level demon that was forcibly downgraded. Su Fan put away the demon-breaking sword and then stomped his right foot on the ground. Bang! He stepped on the ground to create a huge pit, and then his demon body, which was hundreds of feet tall, rushed towards the Bone Crusher Demon. Shang Shan Kao? At this time, an extremely tall phantom of an ancient demonized gray bear rose into the air from behind him, and the surrounding scene also changed, turning into vast wilderness. Su Fan's huge demon body swept across more than 10 miles like thunder and lightning, and crashed into the Bone Crusher Demon with an extremely terrifying momentum. Boom! The two huge demon bodies collided fiercely, creating a terrifying effect like Mars hitting the Earth, and made a huge sound like destroying the world. The ferocious and terrifying Bone Crusher was smashed to pieces, and countless broken bones splashed everywhere, and instantly turned into bone fragments all over the ground. But an amazing scene appeared. The bone fragments that were originally smashed all over the ground gathered together again and roared towards Su Fan. Damn, I didn't expect this guy to be a rolling meat. Su Fan was so angry at the Bone Crusher on the opposite side that he laughed. As soon as he thought about it, a huge hammer appeared in his hand. Boom! The Bone Crusher over 100 feet high was once again smashed to pieces by Su Fan with a demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer, leaving bone fragments all over the ground. This time he was careful. Before the Bone Crusher gathered together again, he rushed up with a demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer and smashed it down with a fierce hammer. Bang! Bang! Then, Su Fan continued to smash the Bone Crusher like playing whack-a-mole, until he finally killed it alive, then collected the broken bones on the ground, put them into a jar and sealed them. Su Fan put away the demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer and took out the big sword to continue swinging it several times. Whirlwind slash! Whirlwind slash! Whirlwind slash! After performing several powerful moves in succession, there were only a few monsters left under the entire wall of the Black Mountain base fortress. Su Fan, relying on his own strength, managed to clear the monsters in an entire direction. At this time, the monks who were fighting hard on the city wall were also stunned by the scene below the city. Who is this guy? He's so damn strong. Is this a disciple of our true demon sect? How come I've never seen him before? This is the Demon Dao. None of the disciples of our sect who practice the Demon Dao can achieve this level. That's the Bone Crusher. Although he has been forcibly demoted, he was once a 9th level demon. He was actually smashed to death by him. This guy is too abnormal. He just killed at least hundreds of thousands of monsters by himself. Although the endless monsters still rushed up fearlessly, it would not take long to fill up this large open space. But this also instantly eased the precarious situation in the defense direction of the Black Mountain base. The sudden appearance of such a perverted strong reinforcement also made the monks on the fortress wall of the Black Mountain base cheer loudly. The powerful strength that Su Fan just showed was something that no one, even the elite disciples of the true demon sect who are in the void refining realm, could do. The morale of many monks in the Black Mountain base fortress, who had almost lost their fighting spirit, suddenly exploded, and everyone had a glimmer of hope for victory. With such a great man who can change the situation on the battlefield, it is not impossible to defend the Black Mountain base fortress. Su Fan took a look at the monsters surging in the distance, and his figure disappeared from the spot. When he returned to the fortress of the Black Mountain base, Xiaoning was waiting for him. Fortunately you arrived in time, otherwise the west side of the base might have been lost today. Su Fan did not speak, but walked to a deserted place and sat down cross-legged. Although he was majestic just now, only he knew that in just a short while, he had consumed a lot of his mana and blood. Xiaoning came over, took out a jade bottle from the ring, and handed it to Su Fan. This is the top-grade key replenishing pill my ancestor gave me. Ask me for it when it's gone. Su Fan took the jade bottle, pulled out the stopper, and felt a strong spiritual energy rushing towards him. Just smelling it made him feel refreshed. He didn't hesitate, he poured out a ki-boosting pill and put it in his mouth, then began to use his internal energy to dissolve the medicinal power. It must be said that after all, it was a top-grade ki-boosting pill made by a master in the fusion realm, and the effect was indeed extraordinary. Chapter 1130 People are dying, who cares about those? Su Fan sat cross-legged and replenished his mana, then slowly opened his eyes. He turned around and found that Xiaoning had not left yet, sitting opposite him and looking at him. Why are you still here? Has the defense of the base stabilized? The netherworld has stopped attacking? After hearing Xiaoning's words, Su Fan was not relieved, but became more nervous. It has been nearly 4 days since the space gap was opened. According to the experience of previous catastrophes, it would take at most 5 days for the space gap to be completely opened. In order to capture the Black Mountain base fortress, the netherworld will spare no effort. Tomorrow, the Black Mountain base fortress will definitely experience a very tragic battle, and even he will have to go all out at that time. After all, there is only 1 day left. If the netherworld cannot capture the Black Mountain base, they will be completely blocked outside the space gap. The netherworld has stopped attacking now, and it is obvious that it is brewing some big move. Since you came back, the morale of the disciples in the base has obviously improved, and even I feel relieved. Just now, Su Fan, relying on his own strength, eased the precarious situation in the west of the base, and indeed greatly improved the morale of everyone. But he knew very well in his heart that Xiaoning and the monks of the Black Mountain base were obviously too optimistic. The most tragic battle has not yet begun. This is just the beginning. Facing the upcoming tragic battle, Su Fan didn't even dare to think about it. Su Fan guessed that tomorrow the netherworld will not only send all its forces to attack the Black Mountain base frantically, but they will also continue to build the Starry Sky Gate. For the Black Mountain base, the Starry Sky Gate must be destroyed, and the teleportation hall of the base fortress must also be defended. But at present, except for him, it is estimated that no one in the entire Black Mountain base can destroy the Starry Sky Gate. But if it depends on Su Fan alone, he can't do it. Don't let that time come. He finally destroyed the Starry Sky Gate of the netherworld, but the Black Mountain base fortress fell. Or the base was defended, but the ninth order demon from the netherworld entered the Mangushan through the Starry Sky Gate. No matter which result, it would be a disaster for Su Fan and the Black Mountain base. Because once the space gap is completely opened, when the space stabilizes, the ninth order demon from the netherworld can enter the Mangushan through the space gap. And if Mangushan wants to support the Black Mountain base, it can only wait for the barrier covering the Black Mountain base to completely dissipate. But that will have to wait until a day later, and by then the opportunity will be gone. Even if the big brother of the Mangushan in the fusion realm comes in, Su Fan and many monks in the Black Mountain base will become the monster's fathers. Thinking of this, Su Fan's head hurts with worry. Now he just feels like Alexander, feeling that this is an impossible task. The monsters in the netherworld are not stupid, and they will definitely invest more power to guard the Starry Sky Gate tomorrow. He suffered a big loss last time. Fortunately, he broke out at the critical moment, and then he broke free from the shackles of several willow ghosts. What Su Fan didn't know was that if the yin god in his body hadn't helped him, even if he finally broke free from the restraints, the 9th level demon from the netherworld would have come through the starry sky gate. Su Fan took a deep breath, rubbed his face with his hands, and then looked at Xiaoning opposite him. You should go back and prepare. The next battle will definitely be very tragic. The monsters from the netherworld will definitely attack the fortress of the Black Mountain base at all costs. Hearing Su Fan say this, Xiaoning nodded solemnly, and then stood up from the ground. I'll go prepare now, and you should have a good rest. Everyone in our Black Mountain base still depends on you. Go back and tell them not to hide it, and prepare desperately. After Xiaoning left, Su Fan thought for a while, and then sent a thought to the big boss of the Wumin Upper Realm. Senior, I hope you can help me once tomorrow. How do you want me to help you, Senior? Can you help me break through the realm of refining emptiness now? As long as you take out 3 corpses of fusion realm monks, I can help you break through the continuous realm at any time. 3 corpses of 9th level demons will also do. I now have a few corpses of 9th level demons that have been forcibly downgraded. Is that okay? That's not okay, Senior. Can I owe you first? Not that it's not okay, but then you have to owe me 10 corpses of 9th level demons, and sacrifice all the monsters on the battlefield to me. This is fucking. This old bitch is really mean. Although he doesn't want to break through the realm of refining emptiness in this situation, if he really encounters trouble tomorrow, he can't care so much. After all, when a cultivator breaks through the realm of refining emptiness, he needs to be fully prepared and adjust himself to the best condition. Well, if he really encounters a crisis, he can only do this. People are about to die, who cares about those things? While the netherworld is not attacking, you can start a blood sacrifice now. You can also devour some of the blood of those monsters, which may help your demon-eye body. Su Fan did not believe even a single punctuation mark in the other party's thought. Senior, what you mean is that devouring the blood of these netherworld monsters may help my demonized body, but it may also be harmful. Given your current situation, it is worth a gamble. The corpses of the fat round demon and the wicker ghost will definitely help your demon-eye body. It must be said that Su Fan was somewhat tempted. In fact, what the old man said was right. Given his current situation, it is worth a gamble. Su Fan has seen the strength of the fat round demon and the wicker ghost, and even the bone crusher demon who can't be beaten should not be underestimated. In fact, the bone crusher demon died quite unjustly, encountering the perverted Su Fan. If someone else faced the magical power of the bone crusher demon, it would be really difficult to deal with it. Even Su Fan didn't know how many times he smashed it to death. Moreover, Su Fan guessed that this bone crusher might not be completely dead yet. If it is given some more time, it might be able to condense its true body. Thinking of this, he quickly stood up from the ground. Su Fan ran to the edge of the city wall, looked at the empty battlefield below the city wall, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. When his figure appeared again, his people were already standing on the battlefield below the city wall. Su Fan looked at the countless corpses of monsters piled up under the city wall, as well as the broken limbs and flesh fragments scattered all over the battlefield, and then took a deep breath. Senior, I'm going to start the blood sacrifice. Chapter 1131. This guy is indeed a big devil. After Su Fan sent a thought to the Wumin Upper World boss, he suddenly realized, no, if I didn't have credit, then I'm now blood sacrificing so many monsters. Wouldn't that old bitch have taken advantage of it? Well, start. After receiving the other party's thought in his mind, Su Fan sneered secretly. Senior, if I didn't have credit, how should this blood sacrifice be calculated? Even brothers have to settle accounts clearly. They are just a transaction, so of course they have to settle accounts clearly. Don't worry, I won't let you suffer a loss. I'm going to fuck you. This old bitch is just talking nonsense. If I don't make it clear, he will definitely not admit it when the time comes. You take me for a fool. Senior, there are so many corpses of monsters around the Black Mountain base. If you don't make it clear, after a long while, the Wumin Upper World boss sent a thought. You kid is so fussy. Is it fun? You're talking as if you are very generous. Well, since the senior doesn't care, let's talk about it later. Su Fan sent out a thought, and then turned around to return to the Black Mountain base fortress. But before he took 3 steps, the thought of the witch's upper world boss came to his mind. Now the corpses of monsters around the Black Mountain base are piled up like mountains, countless. The witch's upper world boss has been coveting them for a long time, but he knows this kid too well. So he has been holding back from mentioning this matter, just waiting for Su Fan to reach the end of his rope, so that this kid will willingly sacrifice blood to him. Who knew that this kid has become a thief now, and it's a bit hard to scare him. Okay, then you tell me how we should trade this blood sacrifice. Next, the two began to negotiate the price. After several rounds of difficult tugs, they finally reached an agreement. At this moment, Xiaoning was standing in a hall in the Black Mountain base fortress, looking solemnly at a huge transparent light curtain opposite. Just now, she had made a strict deployment for the next step of the defense of the Black Mountain base. It also let all the monks in the base fortress know what kind of fierce battle they will face next. So at this time, the entire Black Mountain base fortress was filled with a sad atmosphere. Because everyone knew that if they lost the next fierce and bitter battle, they would die. Of course, at this time, even the most cowardly people would not be timid and retreat. This is a realm war. They don't even have the qualifications to surrender. If they lose, they can only become food for many monsters. They have no choice but to fight to the death. Boom. At this time, there was a violent buzzing sound coming from outside the base, and then the entire Black Mountain base shook violently. Xiaoning immediately realized something, and she turned around and ran out. Ring the bell. Everyone, gather and prepare for battle. As the bells rang, all the monks in the Black Mountain base fortress rushed to the city wall in a hurry, ready to fight. But when Xiaoning and the others came to the city wall, they were stunned by the scene below. They saw an extremely thick blood-red light column, which had descended from the sky at some point, and enveloped a huge demon body that was hundreds of feet tall. With a huge demon body as the center, an extremely terrifying and violent hurricane was set off, engulfing everything around it. The most terrifying thing was that bloodlines of various colors snaked out from the bodies of the monsters on the battlefield, and then merged into the terrifying blood-red hurricane. The blood of the monsters in the netherworld was red, green, purple, and all kinds of colors, which looked extremely weird. Fuck, who is this? He is offering a blood sacrifice. This is the method of evil cultivators, but those are the blood of monsters. He swallowed so much monster blood, isn't he afraid of being possessed by the devil? Don't talk nonsense. This is clearly the demon sex demonic path, or the secret method of the blood path. You are talking nonsense. Have you ever seen any demon cultivator of the blood path or demonic path who can make such a big scene? Anyway, what he is offering in blood sacrifice is the flesh and blood of those monsters. As long as it is not human blood, it is none of our business. Shut up. Have you forgotten who wiped out the monster attack under the city with one person? Even if he is an evil cultivator, what can he do? Hearing the discussions of many cultivators on the city wall, Xiaoning smiled bitterly. This guy is indeed a big devil. After several days of bloody battles, the corpses of monsters on the battlefield piled up like mountains. If not 1 million, there must be hundreds of thousands. This guy actually made such a big fuss, it is simply lawless. Fortunately, it was on the battlefield of the Black Mountain base, and no one cared about what he did. If it was in another place, it would definitely attract a lot of criticism. At this time, it is estimated that many people have guessed the identity of this guy. But because of Su Fan's performance in turning the tide just now, no one called out his identity. Finally, the terrifying blood-colored hurricane gradually subsided. The blood-colored light column that enveloped the hundreds of feet of demon body became dimmer and dimmer until it finally disappeared. At this time, a group of true demon god sect disciples of the refining void realm in the Black Mountain base all gathered around Xiaoning. Senior Sister Xiaoning, is this guy the... Before this fellow disciple finished speaking, Xiaoning turned his head sharply and glared at the other party fiercely. I only know that his name is Dubai, an inner disciple of our true demon god sect, who destroyed 4 starry sky gates in the netherworld with his own strength. After Xiaoning finished speaking, he glanced at the group of fellow disciples of the refining void realm around him. If it weren't for junior brother Dubai who destroyed the starry sky gate of the netherworld with his own strength, our Black Mountain base would have been turned into ashes long ago. After hearing her words, the disciple of the refining realm who had just asked the question lowered his head in dismay and stopped talking. None of the other disciples of the refining realm around him cared about this matter. Although that person was a brutal evil demon, he was now a member of the true demon god sect, and they wished that their sect had such a powerful fellow disciple. Who the hell cares about these things when their lives might not be saved? Ouch! At this time, the huge demon body hundreds of feet tall under the city roared to the sky, and the evil power like a tide suddenly swept out. This terrifying sound was heard from a long distance, with a faint low wail, a gloomy breath and a fierce murderous intent. Xiaoning and others on the wall of the Black Mountain base all shuddered, and a chill rushed from their spines to the top of their heads. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1132 I am destined to be a troublemaker now. Su Fan's roar shocked many monks on the wall of the Black Mountain base. Is this still a human? He is more evil than the monsters in the netherworld. Su Fan was in a very uncomfortable state at the moment. The magic blood of countless monsters in the netherworld had completely penetrated his skin, blood vessels, muscles, and even bones. The extremely pure magic blood flowed along the blood vessels to his limbs, heart, brain, and every nerve. Su Fan felt as if there were countless poisonous snakes in his body, biting him with sharp fangs. The whole body was in severe pain as if being cut by a knife, spreading in all directions along the meridians in his body. The feeling was like magma flowing in the blood vessels, and the severe pain was like a tidal tsunami. Although the magic blood that had been continuously purified by the blood shadow descending Gatorade had been purified to be extremely pure, the impurities, evil thoughts and demonic thoughts in the blood had been completely removed, making the blood purer. But don't forget that the flesh and blood that Su Fan devoured were all from the netherworld. Especially the corpses of a fat round demon and 4 willow ghosts. Although they were forcibly downgraded, these demons were still 9th level demons not long ago. Fortunately, his mind was filled with endless resentment and various negative emotions, but he was still able to maintain his rationality. What he didn't know was that the yin god in his body had now condensed into a humanoid state with a face vaguely similar to Su Fan. 7 halos of different colors were constantly rotating around the humanoid yin god. These 7 halos devoured the demon blood frantically, and then merged the demon blood into Su Fan's blood, turning it into a huge wave that flowed freely in his blood vessels. It was not until the manic demon blood in Su Fan's body gradually subsided that he looked up to the sky and roared loudly. After roaring, he didn't realize anything, but he also frightened Xiaoning and others on the top of the Black Mountain base. Because they failed to trace of the powerful aura that only a 9th level demon could have from this roar. Even Xiaoning is not sure whether the huge demon body hundreds of feet tall under the city is still a human cultivator. But after roaring, Su Fan felt relieved. Although the demon blood in his blood was still agitated occasionally, it was not a big deal and was harmless. Su Fan felt the changes in all aspects of his body again. At first, he did not feel any difference. But after a careful experience, he still felt some changes. For example, there were occasional fluctuations on the surface of the skin, but he could not control these changes in the skin for the time being, but it still made him excited. Because this fluctuation of the skin was very similar to the way the fat round demon resolved his sword. At that time, he envied this magical power to death. Unexpectedly, he also inherited this magical power from the blood of this great demon. How could he not be excited and excited? Then there were some changes in the long hair of his demonized body. Not only did it become thicker and longer, but he also sensed a force from each strand of hair. Of course, these 2 changes were just some signs, but they also indicated the bloodline magical powers he would inherit in the future. In addition to these 2 changes, his physical strength and spiritual awareness had increased a little bit. What surprised him the most was that after swallowing the blood of countless netherworld monsters, his ability to control the netherworld filthy earth and netherworld yin fire was greatly enhanced. At first, Su Fan did not notice this situation. It was not until he opened the game panel that he found that the 2 magical powers had been upgraded to the evolution realm. In any case, swallowing the flesh and blood of countless monsters on the battlefield brought him a lot of benefits. Although there was a lot of restlessness after the demon blood merged into his blood, it was all worth it. In short, the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. Awoo! Awoo! At this time, bursts of shrill howls came from all directions of the Black Mountain base. It's no wonder that the attack of the netherworld monsters has begun. Su Fan looked around, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. At this time, Xiaoning and others also heard bursts of howling from around the base, and she quickly ordered everyone to be on alert. After a while, monsters appeared all over the mountains. They rushed towards the Black Mountain base from all directions like ants crossing the border, and they were densely packed and almost covered the entire battlefield. Not only the ground, but also the air was occupied by monsters, almost covering the sky, and the sun, covering the entire sky. Su Fan stood on the wall of the base fortress, looking at the dense monsters below, rushing over like a tidal wave. Faced with such a spectacular scene, even he couldn't help but be moved. Su Fan found that the proportion of 8th level monsters in this attack of the Netherworld has increased significantly, and they occupy a considerable proportion of the monster group. It seems that the monsters in the Netherworld are also fighting hard. After all, this is their last chance, and they will definitely capture the Black Mountain base fortress at all costs. At this time, the monks on the wall of the Black Mountain base were all in their positions, and all of them were in a posture as if they were facing a great enemy. What was supposed to come finally came. Thinking of this, Su Fan's eyes suddenly condensed. He completely released his spiritual sense, and all the slightest movement within a radius of thousands of miles was instantly visible. Suddenly, Su Fan frowned, and he found that the monsters in the Netherworld began to build the Starry Sky Gate again, and they built 2 at once. This is fucking. I am destined to be tossed around now. Uncle Xiaoning, the Netherworld has started to build the Starry Sky Gate again, and they built 2 at the same time. Then you go quickly. Do you need me to send people to support you? Forget it. Those people you sent, in the end I still have to work for you. No, I can do it myself. To be honest, the people sent by Xiaoning were really of no help to him, but a bunch of burdens. Then you must be careful, senior, you must hold on until I come back. He was really afraid that if he destroyed the Starry Sky Gate of the Netherworld, when he came back, he would find that the Black Mountain base fortress had fallen. Then he would have work in vain. Su Fan sent out his last thought, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. When he drove the invisible ghost crow to the vicinity of the first Starry Sky Gate of the Netherworld, he sensed the breath of countless 8th level monsters. Su Fan found a slightly flat place, landed, and put the ghost crow into his personal secret realm. The victory or defeat of today's decisive battle depends on this one move. Chapter 1133. This thing is too disgusting. Su Fan took a deep breath. It was impossible to sneak in now. He had destroyed 4 Starry Sky Gates of the Netherworld in succession. People had already studied him thoroughly. It was impossible to take shortcuts. Therefore, Su Fan could only fight hard now, that is, to kill directly without any technical content. Thinking of this, Su Fan sent a thought to the Witch Upper World boss. Senior, let's start. As soon as his thought was sent out, a blood-colored light column fell from the sky and enveloped his figure. Su Fan's body was suddenly filled with rich blood, and dense blood-colored witch patterns appeared all over his body. Then, with a boom, with him as the center, a blood-colored witch formation with a radius of hundreds of feet was formed. Su Fan's aura also began to rise sharply, and in a moment his realm was raised to the late stage of the refining realm. The boiling thick black fog permeated around him, and his body gradually grew stronger. In a moment, it had reached a height of hundreds of feet. Then I saw dense black scales surging from the demon body, constantly drilling out from every corner of the demon body, bursting out with extremely terrifying power. Crack! Crack! One by one, hideous bone spurs squeezed out from every joint, and each key part formed a piece of rough armor. The huge and hideous head, which was originally split apart, had long hair as thick as steel wire, and it also turned into buckets of vines and split down. The dense vines almost fell to the ground, looking like his demon body was covered with a cloak. Ouch! Su Fan roared to the sky, and the evil power like a tide suddenly swept out. This terrifying sound was heard far away, with a faint low wail, a gloomy breath and a fierce killing intent. As Su Fan thought, a big sword appeared in his left hand, and a huge hammer was held in his right hand. He kicked the ground with his right foot, and his figure disappeared from the spot in an instant. Then a huge demon body swept across dozens of miles like thunder and lightning, carrying an extremely terrifying momentum, and passed through more than 10 defensive barriers of the Netherworld. Since Su Fan launched the Blood Shadow Descending Array, the monsters in the distant valley had already discovered his arrival. Thousands of 8th level monsters roared and appeared from around the valley, densely blocking the outside of the valley. Su Fan's huge demon body, hundreds of feet tall, seemed to carry a mighty force of tens of millions of pounds, and crashed into the dense group of monsters in front of the valley. Boom boom, the extremely terrifying mighty force was like lightning striking the void, and the gathering of majestic power was like lightning striking the void. The space within a radius of hundreds of miles seemed to be distorted, and the shock wave visible to the naked eye was like a wave rushing in all directions. The thousands of densely packed 8th level monsters blocking the valley were instantly knocked away. Boom, almost at the same time, Su Fan's huge demon body ejected a deep purple thunder of heaven and earth, bursting out an extremely dazzling halo. This dazzling halo composed of heaven and earth thunder swept through the scattered group of 8th level monsters, cutting countless monsters in half. Boom, immediately afterwards, another dazzling red halo ejected from Su Fan's body. And the densely packed 8th level monsters around were swept fiercely by the extremely hot anno ground. When Su Fan rushed into the valley, there were only a few of the densely packed 8th level monsters that had just blocked the outside of the valley. Su Fan had just rushed into the valley, and without thinking, he swung the 8th level demon subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer in his right hand towards the altar at the end of the valley. At this time, around the altar at the end of the valley, pieces of sticky juice suddenly sprang out, and instantly supported layers of protective shields in the air. Su Fan threw out this hammer with all his strength, and the power was imaginable. But to his surprise, the 8th level demon subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer he threw out was actually blocked. The hammer head, which was over 100 feet in size, was like hitting cotton, wrapped in pieces of sticky liquid, and fell to the ground with a bang. After blocking the demon subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer, the sticky liquid rushed into the air again, turning into pieces of disgusting snot-like things, blocking the front of the altar. What the hell? Su Fan had already recognized these monsters. They were the snot monsters from the netherworld. Originally an extremely difficult 9th level monster, it should have been forced to downgrade at this time and sent into the barbarian bone heaven through the gap in space. Looking at the pieces of snot monsters that turned into various shapes, Su Fan was so disgusted that he almost vomited. This thing is really disgusting. However, these snot monsters were really difficult to deal with. They were simply hard to cook and chew. They easily blocked the demon subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer. He was not bragging. Even the old monsters in the half-step fusion realm could not catch the hammer he threw with all his strength. At this time, a large number of fat round monsters, bone-crushing monsters and willow monsters appeared from all over the valley and surrounded Su Fan in the middle. The netherworld really thinks highly of me. These monsters in the netherworld are also fighting hard. In order to deal with him, they actually sent so many 9th level monsters who were forcibly downgraded. Su Fan held a demon-breaking sword with both hands and swung it a full circle. Whirlwind slash, as a flash of sword light passed by, an endless violent hurricane was aroused in an instant. The mighty and terrifying sound tore through the wind and clouds within a radius of hundreds of miles, and the surrounding air was torn to pieces layer by layer. The aura of heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of miles was violently vibrated at this moment, and was controlled by an invisible and intangible terrifying storm. The terrifying force that covered the sky and the sun rolled up like a tsunami, and even condensed into a terrifying vortex in the sky that made the world tremble. At this moment, even the vast starry sky in the huge crack above the sky glimmered at this moment. The fierce sword that contained the artistic conception of the great Dao, wrapped in an extremely huge terrifying force, struck the void. This violent hurricane swept through, and even the continuous mountains around the valley collapsed in pieces. The densely packed monsters that surrounded Su Fan were now in the center of this terrifying hurricane. Although the big demons at the front were the fat round demon and snot monster with the strongest defense. They did rely on their strong defense to resist this fierce sword, but they were also swept up by the terrifying hurricane like a tidal wave, and the figures of the big demons were scattered in the air. Chapter 1134 It's time to fight hard. Those fat round demons and snot monsters with amazing defensive power were swept up, but they did not suffer any damage. However, countless bone-crushing demons and willow monsters were not so lucky. Many of them were torn into pieces by the sharp and boundless terrifying airflow. At this time, Su Fan's front suddenly became empty. He raised his hand and made a strange finger gesture. I saw that the ground next to the altar at the end of the valley suddenly arched up a mound of earth, and then formed a ferocious giant demon over 100 feet tall. Su Fan snapped his fingers, and the dirty earth giant demon exploded instantly. Boom! With a devastating roar, A terrifying explosion that almost overturned the entire sky occurred in an instant, and the whole world shook violently. The aftermath of the terrifying explosion formed a world-destroying annihilation force, sweeping around like a terrifying hurricane, swallowing everything within a radius of hundreds of miles. When the dust and smoke cleared, let alone the altar, even the entire valley no longer existed. Su Fan waved his hand and sucked the 8th-level demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer into his own hand, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. His huge demon body had already spanned dozens of miles in an instant, and then he removed his demonized body and restored his true human body. At this time, there was a wave in the air ahead. Su Fan jumped onto the back of the invisible ghost crow, and then whistled away. In the valley just now, there were bursts of shrill howling. Because the monsters in the netherworld have launched a general attack on the Black Mountain base, Su Fan can only race against time to destroy the second Starry Sky Gate. If the Black Mountain base fortress is captured by the monsters, then even if he destroys the Starry Sky Gate, they will die. So Su Fan was anxious at this time, desperately urging the ghost crow to fly desperately. Suddenly, his eyes condensed, and his consciousness sensed a powerful breath in the air ahead. Damn, the monsters in the valley just now must have passed the news to another Starry Sky Gate. These monsters have sent out flying monsters to block his way along the way. Su Fan patted the ghost crow on the back and gave an order. After receiving the order from its master, the ghost crow suddenly soared into the sky and rushed into the sky in an instant. Compared with the flying ability, the ghost crow is much stronger than the flying monsters in the netherworld. Whether it is flying height or speed, they are completely on a different level. Su Fan drove the ghost crow, constantly dodging the flying monsters that blocked him, and finally rushed to the sky above a mountain range. About 100 miles ahead is the second Starry Sky Gate in the netherworld. According to the situation sensed by Su Fan's spiritual sense, there are countless 8th-level monsters densely packed around the valley where the Starry Sky Gate in the netherworld is located. It seems that the monsters in the netherworld are also anxious, and I don't know how many monsters they have sent to guard this Starry Sky Gate. Dubai, have those 2 Starry Sky Gates been destroyed? Big sister, I'm not a Superman. Just solved one, and I'm preparing to destroy the second Starry Sky Gate. Come back as soon as possible. I'm afraid the base can't hold on. Su Fan's brain was about to explode after receiving Xiao Ning's thoughts. Boom. At this time, a violent roar came from the valley more than 100 miles away, and a Starry Sky Gate hundreds of feet high had risen from the ground. This is fucking. To make matters worse, the Starry Sky Gate opposite has been activated by the monsters in the netherworld. Su Fan sighed. He knew in his heart that it was time to fight desperately. In order to survive, even if the King of Heaven stood in front of Su Fan, he would smash the opponent. Thinking of this, Su Fan sent a thought to the big boss of the upper realm of the Witch Gate. Senior, start. Then, a blood-colored light column instantly fell from the sky and enveloped his figure. Ouch! Su Fan activated his demonic body. Perhaps because he had devoured the flesh and blood of countless monsters from the netherworld, his demonic body was now even more evil. He was filled with the aura of destruction, killing, blood, terror, death, resentment, and despair. His aura already had a bit of the flavor of the netherworld. Su Fan did not rush to attack, but closed his eyes and stood there quietly. At this moment, the light screen of the game panel appeared in his mind, with dense text emerging, and pages were flipping quickly. The pages on the game panel flipped faster and faster, and the mysteries of the 3,000 great ways of the heavens and the worlds, the changes of yin and yang, the impermanence of life and death, and the circulation of the 5 elements were constantly changing and interpreting. Cause and effect, life and death, yin and yang, chaos, destruction, extinction, the end of fate, the extinction of fate, the 5 elements, the 4 images, the 8 trigrams, and other avenues with infinite mysteries were all contained in it. The pages on the game panel were flipping rapidly. The huge amount of information caused the game panel to be on the verge of crashing, making a sharp hissing sound. Bang! With a dull sound, the massive amount of data just running also caused the game panel to finally crash as expected. Su Fan slowly opened his eyes, and then a thought came to his mind, and a dark sword of more than 10 feet appeared in his hand. He raised the dark sword with both hands and slashed it lightly. Swish! I saw an ordinary sword light passing through the void, as if it flew from outside the domain. Everything was like an antelope hanging its horns and leaving no trace, without the slightest smell of fireworks. But at this moment, it seemed that time and space had stopped, and even the whole world was solidified. This piece of heaven and earth seemed to be blocked by some powerful force, emitting a light that made the void tremble. It seemed that some invisible and intangible changes had occurred, and the surrounding space was also distorted in large areas. Then, the ordinary sword light expanded thousands of times in an instant, almost covering the entire sky. An extremely mighty aura penetrated the sky for hundreds of miles without any disguise, and rolled towards the valley more than 100 miles away. Zhang, a sword chant resounded through the world, the sharp whistle shocked the sky, and tore through the wind and clouds. The vast and boundless terrifying momentum rushed into the sky at this moment, almost crushing the entire world. Countless monsters around the valley more than 100 miles away, at this moment. A sense of panic arose in their hearts, as if they had ushered in a great catastrophe of heaven and earth, a terrible oppression like the end of the world. Hiss. Awoo. Countless monsters subconsciously let out a shrill scream of fear, as if they were trapped in the abyss of despair and terror. They looked at the vast and boundless terrifying momentum that penetrated the sky and earth and fell from the sky in horror. Boom boom, the sword light that pierced through the sun, moon and stars finally fell down, accompanied by a shocking collision, and the star-like aura light was extinguished at this moment. The valley more than 100 miles away, and countless monsters, were as vulnerable as rotten wood, and turned into ashes piece by piece. Endless bloodlight covered the sky and dyed the entire sky. After the sword light fell, except for leaving a deep gully that ran for hundreds of miles, all the matter within hundreds of miles, including all the monsters, was instantly evaporated at this moment. Chapter 1135 I can't hold on any longer. Su Fan leaned on the dark sword, panting heavily, staring at the mountain of more than 1 million in size. At this moment, the mountain in the distance had been cut into a deep gully hundreds of miles long by his sword. The valley where the starry sky gate of the netherworld was located had long since disappeared. However, the sword just now almost consumed most of his blood and spiritual consciousness. Although the power of this sword was so powerful that even he himself was afraid, he knew in his heart that with his current strength, he could only cut 2 swords at most before he would be exhausted. Su Fan removed his demonized body and restored his true human body, then drove the ghost crow and flew quickly towards the Black Mountain base. I hope there is still time, Xiaoning, you must hold on. At this moment, the wall of the Black Mountain base fortress has been lost, and Xiaoning has organized the remaining monks in the base to retreat to the inner city to fight desperately against the endless monster attacks. Although Xiaoning and others tried their best, they still failed to defend the wall of the base fortress. There was no way. The netherworld changed its previous tactics and did not let the cannon fodder army lead the charge. This time, the first to attack were the 9th level demons who were forced to downgrade. Behind them were densely packed 8th level monsters. Now even Xiaoning was standing on the front line. Because most of the monks had not withdrawn just now, there was a serious shortage of manpower to guard the inner city at this time. Xiaoning almost threw out all the 9th level fairy talismans in his hand, but still failed to curb the attack of the monsters in the netherworld. Fortunately, the defense formation of the inner city was relatively strong, and more than 10 9th level defense fairy talismans were activated, so it has not fallen until now. Now Xiaoning and others have nowhere to retreat, and behind them is the teleportation hall. Once the teleportation formation of the Black Mountain base fortress is captured, all his previous efforts will be wasted. At this time, several 9th level demons who were forcibly demoted joined forces to open a gap in the inner city's defense formation, and dense 8th level monsters swarmed in from the gap. Xiaoning flashed to the gap, took out 2 9th level fairy talismans, and threw them at the gap. 2 extremely powerful spells instantly wiped out a large area of dense monsters in front of the gap. Xiaoning then organized people to block the dense monsters outside the gap, and then repair the gap. Why doesn't this guy come back? I can't hold on any longer. Xiaoning found a place to sit cross-legged, stuffed a few top-grade key replenishing pills into his mouth, and then used his power to dissolve the drug power. Because he took a lot of key replenishing pills today, even though he had top-grade pills in his hands, the effect of replenishing key was obviously discounted. Boom! Xiaoning had just finished replenishing his mana when he heard a loud noise that shook the earth. She suddenly jumped up from the ground and looked towards the place where the loud noise came from. She saw that the defense formation not far away was shaking violently. The violent sound waves shook the nearby monks and made them fly backwards and fall far away to the ground. Some people were directly shocked to the point of bleeding from all 7 orifices. It was obvious that they could not survive. Even those who were lucky enough to survive had temporarily lost their combat effectiveness. The Netherworld realm did not know how to use it to create a gap in the defense formation again. Dense monsters swarmed in from the gap. In the front were more than 10 fat round demons and snot monsters, followed by bone-crushing demons and willow ghosts. Behind these 9th level demons who were forcibly demoted, there were dense 8th level monsters. Xiaoning hurriedly ran over there, raised his hand and offered a huge ghost flag to flutter in the wind, and countless black smoke whistled out of the ghost flag. The thick black smoke quickly condensed into Ghost Emperor, roaring and rushing towards the monsters on the opposite side. Other disciples of the refining realm who came to support also summoned huge zombies, insect poisons everywhere, and various magic spells to attack them. Unfortunately, the attacks of Xiaoning and others were blocked by the fat round demon and snot monster who rushed to the front. Although Xiaoning and others provided support in time, the assault of the Netherworld realm was too fierce this time. Those 9th level demons who were forcibly downgraded have already gained a foothold in the gap of the defense formation, and endless monsters poured into the inner city like a tide. Xiaoning and others were immediately caught in a bitter battle. They were surrounded by countless monsters in the middle. Although they fought desperately, it was useless. After fighting for a while, she was seriously injured and could only grit her teeth and fight with injuries, but she could not stop the attack of countless monsters at all, and had retreated to the periphery of the teleportation hall. Xiaoning turned her head and looked at the teleportation hall behind her. She couldn't help but sighed. The Black Mountain base had fallen. The other monks who survived the base had also fallen into despair at this time, and some disciples had no intention of fighting. At this critical moment, there was a loud bang. A huge demon body hundreds of feet high suddenly fell from the sky and landed in the inner city. Its thick pair of demon feet stepped on more than 10 fat round demons and snot monsters. Then, Su Fan picked up the demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer and smashed it down fiercely. Boom boom boom, the hammer head, which was dozens of feet in size, was like a towering mountain, and it smashed hard into the gap in the defense formation, and a terrifying loud noise suddenly broke out. Suddenly, a terrifying and great force broke out, and a visible airflow swept in all directions. The sharp and boundless terrifying airflow turned everything into dust wherever it passed, and instantly crushed the densely packed demons in the gap. Su Fan raised his hand and made a gesture, and a mound of earth suddenly rose on the ground outside the gap in the defense array, and then a ferocious giant demon over 100 feet tall rose from the ground. Back off, all of you. After hearing Su Fan's shout, Xiaoning and others retreated more than 100 steps without thinking, and found a place to hide. Paw! Su Fan snapped his fingers, and the dirty earth giant demon outside the gap in the defense array exploded. The explosion of the dirty earth giant demon produced a huge explosion that almost overturned the entire sky. The annihilation force formed by the terrifying shock wave raged wildly, like a tsunami, and instantly blew the densely packed monsters outside the gap into pieces. The aftermath of the explosion also set off a world-destroying storm, and the endless monsters around were also swept into this terrifying torrent like fallen leaves. The monsters gathered on the side outside the inner city of the Black Mountain base were immediately wiped out by Su Fan. Xiaoning and the others also took this opportunity to quickly summon the formation monks to repair the defense formation. As for the remaining monsters in the city, Su Fan also killed them one by one with the demon-subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer. Chapter 1136. No matter how strong he is just one person. After the monsters in the inner city were completely cleared, Su Fan looked around. Through the shield of the inner city defense array, he saw that the entire Black Mountain base fortress was almost filled with dense monsters. Now, only the inner city is still holding on in the Black Mountain base fortress. It's too dangerous. If he had come a step later, the teleportation hall would have fallen. When the monsters in the Netherworld destroyed the teleportation array of the Black Mountain base, all of them would eventually become a pile of monster poop. Su Fan released his huge demon-eye body and restored his human body. Because it was too exhausting to maintain the demon-eye body, it was not even noon yet, and the battle was still going on. Su Fan came to Xiaoning's side and saw that her face was as pale as paper, with a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. You finally came back. If you were a step later, you wouldn't be able to see me. After hearing her words, Su Fan smiled. The two starry sky gates built by the Netherworld have been destroyed, Xiaoning smiled with satisfaction, then her body tilted and she almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Su Fan quickly supported her. Su Fan picked her up by the waist, went to a deserted place nearby, and gently put her on the ground. He took out a jade bottle from his ring, poured out a few healing pills, and stuffed them into Xiaoning's mouth. You can heal your wounds with peace of mind. I'll be here next time, and the teleportation hall won't fall. Xiaoning laughed and said, even if I want to fight, I don't have the strength. I'll leave the Black Mountain base to you. Su Fan didn't say anything, just nodded. Because the Netherworld's several consecutive attacks just now were all beaten back, so the next attack was the cannon fodder army, and the defense of the inner city was temporarily stabilized. Su Fan took the opportunity to sit cross-legged, took out a bottle of top-grade ki-boosting pills from his ring, poured out a few pills and stuffed them into his mouth, and then used his internal energy to dissolve the power of the medicine. The next battle will be a fierce one, and Su Fan must be in the best condition at all times. After a long while, he slowly opened his eyes. He saw Xiaoning sitting cross-legged there, looking at him with his chin propped up. How is your injury? Now almost every disciple guard in the inner city is injured. My injury is nothing. Su Fan got up from the ground and walked around the inner city. The hundreds of thousands of monks originally gathered in the Black Mountain base, now there are less than 10,000 left. Most of them died in the offensive and defensive battles in the past few days. The fierceness of the battle in the Black Mountain base fortress can be seen. Look at the dense monsters outside the inner city. There are hundreds of thousands of monsters gathered in various places in the Black Mountain base alone. If you count the endless monsters outside the fortress, if all are added together, there will be more than millions. Su Fan sighed. With so many monsters, he can't kill them all even if he is exhausted. Moreover, the main force of the Netherworld Realm's siege, the weakest of which is the 8th level monster, and the ones rushing in the front are even a group of 9th level monsters who are forced to be demoted. Boom! At this time, another terrifying loud noise came, and the entire Black Mountain base was shaken violently. The attack of the Netherworld Realm began again. They did not know what means they used to open a gap in the inner city's defense formation again. Countless monsters from the Netherworld Realm swarmed in from the gap and fought with the monks guarding the inner city. Fortunately, Su Fan arrived in time and knocked away the 9th level monsters who were forced to be demoted in the front with a fierce hammer, thus resolving this crisis. Boom! At this time, another earth-shaking loud noise came from another direction of the inner city. Su Fan's figure disappeared from the original place in an instant, and he appeared in another gap in the defense formation. With a sword in his left hand and a hammer in his right hand, he frantically chopped and smashed, and with his own strength, he resisted the attack of a large number of monsters, creating time for other monks in the inner city to counterattack. In the next few hours, the monsters in the Netherworld were like crazy, launching fearless attacks again and again. Su Fan was busy like a spinning top, constantly appearing in the most critical places in the inner city. But no matter how strong he was only one person. After all, human power is limited, and iron can only hammer a few nails. His mana and consciousness could not be replenished at all, and he didn't even have time to take a breath, let alone rest to replenish his consciousness and mana. Su Fan persisted for several hours, relying on his abnormal body to hold on. Not only him, but also the more than 10,000 monks guarding the inner city were almost the same, including Xiaoning. Almost everyone was fighting with injuries. The battle situation of the inner city's attack and defense has been completely fierce, just like a huge meat grinder, taking away a large number of lives at all times. Under the walls of the inner city, various monsters from the Netherworld were piled up like mountains, and corpses were everywhere. But even so, the crazy attack of the Netherworld showed no signs of weakening, and the attack became more and more fierce. Su Fan also used all his skills, using all means, but he had no time to replenish his mana, and could only stuff ki-boosting pills into his mouth one by one. As for the effect of replenishment, it can only be said to be unsatisfactory. But Su Fan didn't dare to rest at all, because he was running around the inner city like a firefighter, holding off waves of forced downgrades of the 9th level demons. But even so, facing the endless crazy monsters, the defense of the inner city became more and more critical, and the casualties were extremely heavy. More than half of the more than 10,000 monks who were originally guarding the inner city had been lost in just half a day. Fortunately, the thousands of monks who survived were mostly monks in the spiritualization realm and the refining void realm, and hundreds of thousands of low-level monks had already been consumed in a few days of fighting. Although the inner city of the Black Mountain Base Fortress is not large, it is impossible to deploy guards at all locations with only the current thousands of monks. Moreover, everyone's consumption is very high, and many monks are fighting for their lives. But even so, facing the endless crazy attacks of monsters, the defense of the inner city is still in a state of distraction. Just after killing all the monsters pouring in from this side, more monsters pour in from the other side. The Netherworld also knows that this is their last chance, so they don't care about casualties at all. Now the main force of the attack is the 9th level demons who are forced to advance, plus countless 8th level monsters. If there are only 80,000 or 10,000 monsters, Su Fan can easily kill them all by activating his demonized body. But facing hundreds of thousands of high-level monsters, even he can't fight. After several hours of bloody battles, even Su Fan is almost at his limit. He has used all his tricks, but he can't kill all the monsters like a tide. And those 9th level demons who are forced to downgrade in the Netherworld are not so easy to deal with. Especially the fat round demon and snot monster with amazing defense, together with a large number of wicker ghost and bone crusher demon, are extremely strong in both attack and defense. If Su Fan wants to destroy this combination of high-level monsters, it will take a lot of effort, and he can only repel them temporarily. As expected, the outer wall of the inner city of the Black Mountain Base was lost. Su Fan, with thousands of surviving monks, can only rely on the buildings around the teleportation hall to resist the attacks of countless monsters. Chapter 1137 Human power is sometimes limited. Bang! Su Fan picked up a bone crusher and threw it to the ground, breaking it into pieces. He then rushed over and stomped on it a few times. But the bone crusher was extremely difficult to deal with. As long as there were a few broken bones left, it could continue to condense its true body. However, Su Fan also found a way to deal with the monsters, which was to use the Yang Disha and the thunder in his body to burn these monsters. The effect of killing monsters was better than his 8th level demon subduing sky-splitting mountain hammer. Seeing the broken bones all over the ground quickly condensing together, Su Fan waved his hand and threw out a fire snake that snaked over. The scorching fire snake instantly entangled the half-condensed demon body, and in a short while, the bone crusher was completely killed. At this time, several disgusting snot monsters came over again. They turned into pieces of sticky liquid films and stuck to Su Fan. The snot monster thing is like a piece of rolling knife meat. It can't be cut by a knife or smashed by a hammer. And once you are stuck with this kind of sticky big snot, it will be miserable. It is simply sucking your marrow and will not stop until you are corroded into a pool of pus. Shoo! Su Fan's eyes condensed, and a manic deep purple thunder of heaven and earth instantly popped out of his body, easily cutting off the two snot monsters. Then, he thought about it, and a dark big sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Su Fan rushed over and split the fat round demon behind him into two halves. The positive pole and the thunder of heaven and earth are specially used to counter all kinds of demons and monsters. The power of the demon-breaking sword against the monsters in the Netherworld has increased several times. So even though those 9th order demons in the Netherworld who were forced to downgrade surrounded him and attacked him, he killed them one by one with his Yang Disha, Shyanti leading and the demon-slaying sword. Moreover, Su Fan had always been fighting in close combat in order to reduce the consumption of mana and consciousness. Other cultivators such as Ioning, who were guarding the inner city, were not as relaxed as him. Although the various sinister and treacherous methods of the demon sect cultivators emerged in an endless stream, the demon sect methods were effective against human cultivators, but they were less effective against the demons in the Netherworld. Therefore, the disciples of the heavenly demon sect were obviously somewhat powerless against the demons in the Netherworld. In addition, there were endless demons, and the cultivators guarding the inner city of the Black Mountain Base suffered great losses. This was still due to the pervert Su Fan, who at least attracted most of the 9th order demons who were forced to downgrade. If he hadn't existed, the teleportation hall of the Black Mountain Base would have fallen long ago. Despite this, Su Fan couldn't stand it anymore at this time. Although he has tried his best to reduce his own consumption, he has been fighting for several hours in a row, and his mana and consciousness are almost exhausted. Now he can no longer perform powerful Taoist and secret arts, and the 8th level and 9th level immortal talismans in his hands are almost used up. Fortunately, Su Fan's body is extremely abnormal. Until now, his physical strength has not been exhausted. and he can still activate the magical powers of the heavenly demon Saint Body Art. It is precisely because of this that he can continue to fight. But human power is sometimes limited. Su Fan knows that he can't hold on for much longer. Now in the fortress of the Black Mountain Base, except for some buildings around the teleportation hall, there are still monks holding on. The rest of the base fortress is already crowded with dense monsters, not to mention that there are endless monsters outside the base waiting to enter the Black Mountain Base. This battle can't be fought, Su Fan sighed secretly. Although he thought so in his heart, he still had to fight. Now the teleportation hall behind them is the only hope for Su Fan and others to survive. Once the monsters from the netherworld destroyed the teleportation hall, they would definitely be dead. At this time, Su Fan saw Xiaoning and others in the distance, who had been surrounded by several 8th level monsters, and behind them was the main entrance of the teleportation hall. Xiaoning and several junior brothers in the refining realm were guarding the door of the teleportation hall, trying their best to block the attack of several big demons. However, the monsters on the opposite side were all 9th level big demons that were forcibly downgraded, and Xiaoning and others were no match for them at all. At this time, a junior brother in the refining realm in the door bowed to her. "Senior sister, junior brother will go first." After the other party said this, he rushed over fiercely. Xiaoning and others knew what he was going to do, and hurriedly found a place to hide. Boom boom, with a loud noise that shook the earth, the refining realm monk of the true demon god sect launched a self-destruction, and died together with several big demons who rushed in the front. The horrible explosion blew a huge pit on the square opposite the teleportation hall. Although the several big demons at the front survived the self-explosion, a large area of the densely packed 8th level demons behind them was wiped out. However, the empty area was instantly filled with more demons. Su Fan watched the cultivator in the void refining realm self-explode, even though he didn't know the name of this fellow disciple and might not have even seen him before. But for some reason, Su Fan felt a surge of hot blood rushing to the back of his head, and his eyes turned red at that moment. "Ah!" he roared fiercely, split the demon in half with a sword, and then his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. When his figure appeared again, he had already appeared in front of Xiaoning and others. Puff! Su Fan split the snot monster that rushed up in half with a sword, and then roared and knocked a fat round demon away. Purifying Red Lotus, then he activated a magical power, and an extremely hot breath instantly exploded from his body. A circle of red light was ejected with him as the center, whistling to the surroundings. This hot light ring formed by the positive pole of the earth instantly covered several miles in radius. Wherever the light ring passed, all the monsters were cut in half by this extremely hot light ring. The densely packed monsters around the teleportation hall were swept away, but were immediately filled with more monsters. "Boy, start the blood sacrifice immediately, I will help you once." At this time, Su Fan's mind came to the idea of the big boss of the Witch Gate upper world. He didn't even think about it, his eyes suddenly condensed, and densely packed blood-colored witch patterns appeared all over his body. Boom! Then, with a dull loud noise, a blood-colored witch formation with a radius of several miles was formed with him as the center. Boom! A blood-colored light column suddenly fell from the sky, covering Su Fan's figure. A thick blood mist began to spread around him, and then an eye of the storm formed with him as the center, setting off a horrific bloody storm. Chapter 1138. You have to take it easy. At this moment, the sky and the earth changed color, and the blood-colored hurricane rolled endlessly. The extremely terrifying momentum spread, and it seemed that a huge oppressive force was generated invisibly. The surrounding space seemed unable to withstand this oppression, and layers of vibrations were visible to the naked eye. The monsters swarming from all directions were instantly swept into this violent blood-colored hurricane. Those high-level monsters could still struggle to get rid of the storm, but most of the monsters could only be like small boats trapped in the storm, being swept up by the violent blood-colored storm. Not only that, they were horrified to find that their flesh and blood were being peeled off layer by layer, turning into skeletons, and then shattered. At this time, a trace of blood came out from the monsters in the base and the corpses of the human monks, and then was swept up from the ground by this violent blood-colored hurricane, and then began to gather around Su Fan. The boundless blood storm spun wildly around Su Fan. After being purified by the blood shadow descending Gata ray, the purest demon blood was swallowed into Su Fan's body. The demon blood purified by the blood shadow descending Gata ray began to be swallowed up bit by bit and entered Su Fan's body. Su Fan only felt that his blood, mana and consciousness, which had been almost exhausted, began to recover continuously. Not only that, Xiaoning and others who were shrouded in the blood shadow descending Gatorade felt a bloody breath pouring into their bodies. They all subconsciously wanted to resist and prevent this breath from entering their bodies. Don't resist. It was not until Xiaoning and others heard Su Fan's cry that they gave up resistance and let this strong bloody breath pour into their bodies. When they found that their mana, blood, physical strength and consciousness were recovering at an astonishing speed, Xiaoning and others were ecstatic. Although it seems a bit evil to replenish mana, blood, physical strength and spiritual consciousness through blood sacrifice, who cares about this at this time? In just a moment, Su Fan was fully revived. He let out a long breath, and then sent a thought to the big boss of the upper realm of the Witch Gate. Senior, help me raise my realm to the refining realm? Think carefully, I will use blood sacrifice to help you recover, but only this time. You kid have to take it easy. Su Fan laughed. Now they have persisted for almost 4 days. It is estimated that it will not take long for the transmission array to recover. It's okay, come on. Senior, boom, with a dull roar, Su Fan's strength began to increase rapidly. In the blink of an eye, his realm has been raised to the late stage of the refining realm. When his realm was upgraded, he activated the demon body without thinking. When Xiaoning and others looked at the huge demon body hundreds of feet tall next to them, they were all shocked and stunned. Although they had seen Su Fan's demonized body before, this was the first time they had seen it so close. At this moment, Su Fan was surrounded by endless dense magic fog, and the extremely terrifying aura spread all around him. The fierce and violent aura suddenly rose to the sky. Awoo! With a terrifying roar, a destructive force was slowly brewing, gradually forming a storm of magic fog. Su Fan felt that all aspects of his data had increased significantly again. However, the game panel was still turned off, and he had no time to study these at this time. Although a large number of monsters were swept away by the blood-colored hurricane just now, a large area of space was left in the entire inner city and even the Black Mountain Fortress. But as the violent blood-colored hurricane gradually subsided, it was now occupied by monsters from the netherworld. Awoo! As if in response to Su Fan's roar just now, a terrifying roar came from outside the Black Mountain base fortress. Su Fan's eyes condensed, and his face suddenly became solemn. Because he sensed several extremely powerful auras coming from outside the city, which were infinitely close to the 9th level demons. It seemed that the Netherworld realm had sent several more powerful monsters in order to destroy the base's teleportation array as soon as possible. At this time, Xiaoning and others also sensed the powerful auras coming from outside the city. Fortunately, they had almost recovered and arranged several 9th level defense arrays outside the teleportation hall. Su Fan turned his head and saw a series of spiritual shields rising into the air, covering the entire teleportation hall layer by layer. He took a deep breath, and then the huge demon body suddenly soared into the sky. Boom! The huge demon body, hundreds of feet high, fell heavily into the group of demon bodies in the Black Mountain base fortress. The two huge demon feet trampled many monsters to death and also caused many monsters to fly. Purifying Red Lotus, an extremely hot breath instantly exploded from Su Fan's body, and a circle of red-hot auras with him as the center popped out and whistled around. At this time, the Black Mountain base was like a can of sardines, crowded with densely packed monsters, and was instantly swept away by this purifying Red Lotus. Countless monsters were annihilated in the blink of an eye. 9 Nether Yellow Spring Rain. Su Fan raised his arms and raised them up suddenly. Boom! A deep blue breath whistled out of his body, and then turned into a steaming water vapor and rushed into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds had covered the entire sky. The dark clouds made the sky above seem to be pressed down and within reach. The clouds were violently surging, like a galloping army, rolling and passing by at high speed from the top. Bang! At this time, a drop of rain fell from the sky into the group of monsters outside the city, and instantly smashed a huge deep pit in the ground. Then the temperature around dropped suddenly, and the pale white frost quickly spread from the bottom of the pit to the top, and then turned into pieces of cold ice that froze everything around. The pale white frost flowers did not stop, but continued to spread around, and the dense monsters were constantly frozen into ice sculptures. Bang! Bang! Then, drop after drop of rain fell from the sky. At first, it was sparse, and then it became more and more urgent, mixed with a strong wind, and turned into torrential rain. The dark night sky, dark clouds surged, and heavy rain poured down, and the rain curtain covered the entire Grand Canyon. Although the raindrops seemed to be the size of rice grains, they were like huge rocks, smashing huge deep pits in the ground. Moreover, the temperature dropped suddenly, and the frost spread rapidly, also spreading around the Black Mountain base. In just a short while, the entire Black Mountain base had turned into an icy world, and countless monsters had turned into dense ice sculptures. Bang! Su Fan stomped on the ground fiercely, and the dense ice sculptures in the Black Mountain base fortress and the surrounding area within a radius of dozens of miles were immediately shattered into powder. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1139, Good and Evil. 9 Nether Yellow Spring reigned for a long time. Even he did not expect that the effect would be so amazing. In fact, it was normal to achieve such an effect. When he was in the nascent soul realm, he used the magical power of 9 Nether Yellow Spring rain and the power was already amazing. Now his strength has been raised to the late stage of the refining void realm, and compared with the cultivators of the same level, his physical body, blood and consciousness are much stronger. In fact, any cultivator of the immortal sex magic can achieve such an effect by using the ice-based Taoist magic, but it requires more than 10 breaths of preparation time for casting. The most terrifying thing about the 9 Nether Yellow Spring rain launched by Su Fan is that it is instant, and its power is much greater than that of the 9th level Immortal Talisman. Now the entire Black Mountain base fortress, as well as the monsters in the area dozens of miles around the city, have all turned into ice slag all over the ground. Not only that, this extremely low temperature area is still spreading to the surrounding area. This also temporarily blocked the countless monsters that were surging in. They could only keep retreating. Occasionally, a few fierce monsters rushed in, but they were immediately frozen into ice sculptures. At this moment, Xiao Ning and others were looking at everything in front of them through the aura shield with horror on their faces. Isn't this guy an evil cultivator? How can he still cast the immortal magic of the immortal sex magic and magic? Just now he cast it instantly, and there was almost no time to prepare the spell. This should be a magical power, not the immortal magic of the immortal sex magic and magic. He is not an evil cultivator. I have specially observed that the basic method he practices is a typical immortal sex orthodox method. Impossible. The blood sacrifice he just launched, isn't that an evil method? What's the matter? Which disciple of the blood Dao in the sect has not launched a blood sacrifice? And the blood sacrifice he just launched is obviously a method of the witch to descend the gods. Listening to the discussions of the people around her, Xiao Ning was also confused. Now even she is a little unsure whether this guy's an evil cultivator. Because from the various methods that Su Fan used, including the physical way, the demon way, and the witch way, although they looked evil, they were hardly evil magic. That is, when he launched the blood sacrifice, the method of devouring the blood and ki had a little shadow of evil magic. Now Xiao Ning's evaluation of Su Fan can only be described in 4 words, that is, both good and evil, awoo. Awoo. At this time, bursts of shrill howls suddenly came from outside the Black Mountain base. The void and the world trembled at this moment, and suddenly there came a vast and boundless sense of oppression that went straight to the heart. Bang! Bang! Then, there were heavy footsteps in the distance, as if some terrifying big man was about to cross the border, and the overwhelming pressure suppressed the entire world. It was a feeling of great terror and great ominousness, as if it had penetrated through the layers of space and directly oppressed everyone's heart. At this moment, Xiao Ning's heart seemed to have fallen into an endless abyss. Not only her, but also the indescribable horror and ominous aura poured down like an overwhelming force, causing all the cultivators in the inner city to feel a monstrous fear. The vast power like the abyss of hell descended from the 9 heavens, making everyone present feel as if they were trapped in a dark abyss of despair. At this moment, the light of the vast starry sky in the huge crack in the sky suddenly darkened. It was as if an endless terrifying force had descended on the world, and everything between heaven and earth collapsed under the descending of this vast power. Su Fan, who was standing under the Black Mountain base, also became solemn. In fact, he had already sensed those extremely powerful auras, which were infinitely close to the auras of the masters in the fusion realm. Su Fan knew very well in his heart that these great demons in the netherworld were definitely extremely powerful opponents. It seemed that the netherworld had already given up, and this was probably the strongest combat power they could bring out so far. Su Fan smiled bitterly, and then sighed secretly. We have been fighting for a few days. It is time to end it. This is the last battle. We should finish it as soon as possible. Ouch! Su Fan roared to the sky, and a tide of evil power suddenly swept out. In this terrifying voice, there were faint low wails, gloomy breath and fierce killing intent. Ouch! Ouch! As soon as Su Fan finished roaring, several big demons on the opposite side also howled as if in protest. Along with the low howls, a zen chanting that seemed to come from ancient times, an ominous killing intent, all mixed together and enveloped Su Fan. Su Fan only felt a world-destroying annihilation force sweeping over him like a terrifying hurricane. He couldn't help but step back more than 10 steps before he stabilized his body. The Black Mountain base fortress and the ice and snow world around it were also swept into this vast and violent shock wave like a tsunami. In a flash, this extremely cold world of ice and snow had disappeared. Just as the extremely cold world disappeared, the endless monsters around the Black Mountain base fortress rushed towards the Black Mountain base fortress again. Su Fan frowned, and couldn't help but feel a little terrified about the several great demons in the distance. His eyes condensed, and a thick black mist filled his body. Rotting bone poisonous mist, a dark mist suddenly appeared and quickly spread around. In a short while, a dark sea of fog formed outside the Black Mountain base fortress. The dense monsters around the Black Mountain base rushed over frantically and plunged into the dark sea of fog. Countless monsters from the netherworld rushed into the poisonous fog and instantly turned into a pool of disgusting pus. Despite this, the endless monsters behind still rushed over fearlessly, and died in the poisonous fog one after another. Although the corrupted bone poison mist is extremely lethal, it can't last for a while in the face of countless monsters from the netherworld. There is no way, there are too many monsters in the netherworld. Before he fights with the several big demons on the opposite side, he can only do so much for Xiaoning and others in the inner city. At this time, Su Fan dared not be distracted. Finally, the figures of the big demons on the opposite side appeared in Su Fan's sight. Looking at the figures of the big demons in the distance, Su Fan was stunned. Although Su Fan knew that the images of the monsters in the netherworld were very abstract, he never thought that the images of the big demons on the opposite side were so abstract. Chapter 1140 The monsters in the netherworld are quite creative. The bodies of the several great demons in the distance were extremely huge, each of them was nearly 1,000 feet tall. However, their images were extremely strange, and Su Fan had no idea what words to use to describe their appearance. These great demons had different images, but each of them seemed to be made up of countless bones. They had no heads, limbs, or torsos, and the entire demon body seemed to be built together at will according to their own moods. Anyway, it was very abstract, and you had no idea how to describe their images. It must be said that the monsters in the netherworld were quite creative. Although the Bone Crusher demon was also made up of countless bones, Su Fan knew in his heart that these great demons were definitely not Bone Crusher demons. The difference between these great demons and the Bone Crusher demons was that the countless bones on their bodies were not spliced together, but were sintered together as if they were put into a kiln. Su Fan immediately guessed the origins of these great demons. According to the information in the netherworld, these great demons should be kill bone demons. The body of the Yeln Bone demon is extremely powerful, especially good at close combat, and also has several powerful magical powers. That's not right. According to the information about the netherworld released by the sect, the Yeln Bone demon is not that big. Su Fan thought about it for a while and figured out the reason. These Yeln Bone demons should also be ninth-order demons that were forced to downgrade to pass through the space gap, and then use some secret method of the netherworld to merge several Yeln Bone demons together. This made the bodies of these Yeln Bone demons nearly 1,000 feet tall. It seems that the netherworld was forced to do nothing. Originally, those ninth-order demons that were forced to downgrade by Fat Round Demon, Snot Monster, Bone Crusher Demon and Wicker Ghost to safely pass through the space gap should be able to suppress the human monks in the Black Mountain base fortress. Who would have thought that a perverted guy like Su Fan would sneak into the Black Mountain base fortress? Although these ninth-order demons who were forced to downgrade themselves were much stronger than the human cultivators in the refining void realm, they all returned in defeat when facing Su Fan. This guy has too many tricks. He is simply the nemesis of those demons in the netherworld. So the high-level monsters in the netherworld came up with this idea, which is to forcibly downgrade a batch of kill bone demons. After they safely passed through the space gap, They used secret methods to fuse several kill bone demons together to create several super kill bone demons today. It must be said that the old demons in the netherworld are really creative. Through the information fed back by other monsters, they specially selected kill bone demons with strong bodies and good at close combat. The super kill bone demons after fusion are indeed much stronger. Although their magical powers have decreased in power due to the forced downgrade, their bodies and consciousness are infinitely close to the level of 9th order demons. By using several super Yeln bone demons to entangle Su Fan, other monsters in the netherworld can take the opportunity to capture the teleportation hall in the inner city of the Black Mountain base. After Su Fan guessed the intention of the netherworld, he couldn't help but get nervous. These super Yeln bone demons gave him the feeling that their bodies were extremely powerful. This was the first time that Su Fan faced an opponent whose body was even more abnormal than his. His intuition told him that he couldn't solve these super Yeln bone demons by relying on the 9 extremes continuous slash that contained the artistic conception of the Great Dao. Moreover, that kind of big move consumed too much energy. After a few swords, he might be exhausted, which was simply not worth the loss. Not to mention the magical power of the heavenly demon Saint body art, it was probably no different from tickling. Thinking of this, Su Fan had an idea. And suddenly a dark sword over 10 feet long appeared in his hand. If you want to kill these super Yeln bone demons, you still have to rely on the demon breaking sword in your hand, as well as the Yangji Disha and Xiandi Leiting, which are specifically designed to defeat demons. Use the demon breaking sword to double the lethality of monsters and fight them head-on in close combat. And you have to take the opportunity to invade the Yangji Disha and Xiandi Leiting into their bodies during the battle, and cause as much damage to these super Yeln bone demons as possible. Su Fan knew very well that there was no possibility of taking shortcuts in the battle against these super Yeln bone demons. Only by fighting hard can you have a chance to kill these super Yeln bone demons. Nothing more to say, just do it. Thinking of this, Su Fan took a deep breath, and then his figure instantly disappeared from the spot, like thunder and lightning sweeping across dozens of miles away. The super Yeln bone demons on the opposite side were actually in a state of facing a formidable enemy. According to the information fed back from the front line, the strength of the human cultivator on the opposite side was extremely abnormal, and many of his methods were like the nemesis of the same race in the netherworld. So even though they were all 9th level demons, they did not dare to look down on Su Fan. However, these demons never expected that the little guy on the opposite side would dare to attack them from dozens of miles away. Su Fan's huge demon body of hundreds of feet appeared in front of a super kill bone demon in a whoosh. Shang Shan Kao, an ancient demonized gray bear, suddenly rose behind Su Fan, and he just ran into it without caring. Not only that, at this time, his whole body was wrapped in 2 mannequin hot auras of dark purple and red. Now his huge demon body is equivalent to a large electric baton burning fiercely. Boom boom boom. The huge demon body of hundreds of feet high ran into the super kill bone demon of more than 1,000 feet high. The scene was like a collision between Mars and the Earth, with a terrifying roar that destroyed the heavens and the earth. Su Fan felt as if he had hit a thick steel plate, and felt a sharp pain that penetrated his bones. His huge demon body was bounced back fiercely, and flew several miles away, and then he managed to stabilize his body. However, the super Yeln bone demon on the opposite side was not much stronger than him, and even suffered a greater loss. Because when Su Fan hit the super Yeln bone demon, he used the means of inch strength and bone hand to penetrate the Yang Disha and the thunder of heaven and earth into the opponent's body. So Su Fan's Xiong Shinlin actually knocked the super Yeln bone demon over 1,000 feet high away, and flew more than 10 miles before falling heavily to the ground. This super Yeln bone demon struggled for a long time and did not get up from the ground. Moreover, there were constant flashes of red light and dazzling electric light all over his body, and he made a sharp hissing sound. Chapter 1141, Battle against the Super Yeln Bone Demon. Seeing that Super Yeln Bone Demon was knocked to the ground by him, Su Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. In fact, he knew very well that if it was just about the strength and power of the flesh, he was still slightly inferior to the opponent. The reason why Su Fan was able to knock the opponent into the air was all due to the thunder of heaven and earth and the positive pole of the earth in his body. This also gave him a lot of confidence. With a demon-breaking sword in his hand, as well as the positive pole of the earth and the thunder of heaven and earth in his body, it was still very likely to kill the big demons on the opposite side. At this time, Seeing their fellows being knocked to the ground, the other super Yeln Bone demons roared and rushed towards Su Fan. Every step taken by the huge demon bodies of several thousand feet would make a loud sound like shaking the earth, and the ground would also tremble violently. Bang! Su Fan kicked the ground with his right foot, and the huge demon body rushed towards several super Yeln Bone demons. The distance of more than 10 miles was reached in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, Su Fan rushed to the front of the first super Yeln Bone demon. At the moment when the two sides were about to collide, Su Fan had an idea, and suddenly a dark big sword appeared in his hand. He suddenly dodged the opponent's huge demon body, turned around with his right foot as the axis, and swung the demon-breaking sword in his hand to sweep over. Almost at the same time, the thunder and lightning of heaven and earth and the positive pole and the evil spirit in Su Fan's body were running wildly, swarming out of his hands with a roar. The black demon-breaking sword was instantly heavily wrapped by the red positive pole and the dark purple manic thunder. The dazzling arc on the sword body flashed wildly, making a crackling sound, like a terrifying thunder dragon ready to go. And outside the manic thunder and lightning, there was a red raging flame. Wherever the sword passed, even the muddy ground was burned into scorched earth by this hot breath. Puff! The demon slayer sword wrapped with the anode earth evil and the thunder of heaven and earth swept through with the force of thunder and lightning, and cut off the opponent's lower half of the demon body in half with one sword. The lethality of the demon slayer sword to monsters has doubled, and with the addition of the anode earth evil and the thunder of heaven and earth, it easily broke the defense of this big demon. Not only that, the manic thunder of heaven and earth also invaded the body of this super Yeln Bone demon with the sword, and raged in its demon body. This super Yeln Bone demon with a height of more than 1,000 feet fell to the ground with a bang, and the whole body emitted dazzling electric light and crackling. Then, there was a boom. The hot anode earth evil also spread in its demon body, and the blazing red flame soared into the sky, emitting an extremely hot temperature. The two halves of the body of this Yeln Bone demon began to tremble violently, and its skin was sizzling from the burning of the Yang earth demon and the thunder of heaven and earth, and it kept emitting thick black smoke, which made it wail in pain. At this time, the other two Yeln Bone demons saw their fellow tribesmen being cut in half, and they hurriedly surrounded them from the left and right sides. However, these two Yeln Bone demons realized the horror of Su Fan's demon-breaking sword, so they did not choose to fight in close combat, but launched their magical powers almost at the same time. Wah! One of the Yeln Bone demons roared fiercely, and Su Fan only felt a burst of fishy wind from the other side, carrying a disgusting smell. Su Fan only felt that his eyes went black, and all kinds of auras such as resentment, coldness, stench, and depravity mixed together, almost making his mind confused and unable to resist. Almost at the same time, another Yeln Bone demon also launched his magical powers. Boom! The ground suddenly opened up, and sharp bone teeth came out of the hole, plowing the ground and stabbing towards Su Fan. At this critical moment, the yin god in Su Fan's body had gathered into human shape, and then snorted coldly. Su Fan only felt a blast in his chaotic mind, like a morning bell and evening drum, which instantly made him wake up from his confused state. Without thinking, he threw the big sword in his hand and stabbed directly at the Yeln Bone demon, who activated the soul and spirit. This guy's soul and spirit were too difficult to deal with, and he almost got hit just now, so he had to get rid of it first. Although the super Yeln Bone demon merged with several big demons, its demon body almost reached nearly 1,000 feet, and its physical strength was extremely powerful. But such a huge demon body was achieved at the expense of its agility, so it was impossible to dodge the magic sword thrown by Su Fan. Puff! The demon-breaking sword wrapped in red anode earth evil and deep purple manic thunder fiercely smashed into its body. Anode earth evil and heavenly thunder also flowed into the body of this Yeln Bone demon along the sword tip and wreaked havoc. Su Fan, who swung out a big sword, didn't even see if he hit the target. The huge demon body suddenly jumped up and narrowly avoided the sharp bone teeth. The hundreds of feet high demon body rolled after landing, then bounced up from the ground and rushed to the front of another Yeln Bone demon in the blink of an eye. Violent tiger collapse. Su Fan's huge demon body was like an open bow, the whole demon body collapsed, and the bones all over his body were cracking. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth thunder and anode earth evil in his body began to run wildly, pouring into his right fist. Su Fan's tightly tense huge demon body suddenly bounced away and punched the Yeln Bone demon. Not only did he use all his strength in this punch, but he also used the penetrating power of the thunder of heaven and earth and the anode of the earth. Not only that, Su Fan also used all the skills of the inch force and bone melting hand of the body. Bang! With a dull bang, Su Fan punched the kill bone demon back more than 10 steps, and sat on the ground. The manic thunder of heaven and earth and the hot anode of the earth also invaded the opponent's body with Su Fan's right fist. In addition, there was a gloomy and strange force that penetrated into the body of this big demon, leaving a spider web-like crack on its body surface, and dense cracks spread everywhere. After all, it was a super kill bone demon that was fused together by several big demons. If it was an 8th level big demon, it would be smashed to pieces after Su Fan's punch. But even the super Yaogu demon with a body that defied the heavens was seriously injured by this violent tiger collapse and could not get up after being knocked to the ground. Su Fan's attacks were always relentless. After he threw this punch, he rushed up like a shadow, raised his right leg high and stomped down. Chapter 1142, The Inner City Can No Longer Hold On. Dragon Elephant Stomping. Su Fan's huge demon body was hundreds of feet long, and his right leg stomped down fiercely. I thought that this step would definitely crush the opponent, but this super kill bone demon was not an ordinary monster. If it was not for the forced emotion, it would be a 9th level demon in the netherworld. The bones on the body of this demon gathered in front of it, forming a huge bone bag in an instant. Boom, there was only a dull sound, and Su Fan's thick demon leg stepped hard on the bone bag, and immediately crushed it. After all, it was a 9th level demon, and it relied on this protective magic to block Su Fan's dragon elephant stomping. The super kill bone demon also took advantage of the power of this dragon elephant stomping and bounced up from the ground. How could Su Fan let the other party do what he wanted? He rushed forward fiercely. His huge demon body, which was hundreds of feet tall, did not seem clumsy at all. He rushed to the other party with his movements like thunder. Mojiao throw. Su Fan's huge demon body, which was hundreds of feet tall, was flexibly attached to the body of the Yiln Bone Demon. He grabbed the other party tightly with his hands and performed a big bet from Chinese wrestling in his previous life. He swung the nearly 1,000-foot-tall demon body up and threw it hard on the ground. Boom boom boom, the huge demon body, which was nearly 1,000 feet tall, was thrown hard on the ground, making a deafening sound and smashing a big hole in the ground. Su Fan rushed over, hugged the other party's huge demon body hard, and threw it back again. Bang! The huge demon body, which was nearly 1,000 feet tall, was thrown hard on the ground by Su Fan with his head down, and it was almost stuck into the ground upside down. Next, Su Fan used the Mojiao shake over and over again, using various postures to slam the demon to the ground. Crack! Crack! Until the last time, the bones of the demon all over his body broke apart, and then whoosh, leaving broken bones all over the ground. The broken bones scattered around, as if alive, began to gather together. Su Fan sneered, raised his hand and waved it several times in succession, and a piece of scorching positive pole and earthly evil and manic thunder and lightning instantly covered the surroundings. The broken bones all over the ground were immediately terrified and fled, but were soon covered by the large piece of positive pole and earthly evil and thunder and lightning, running around madly on the ground. Ouch! At this time, the Yiln Bone Demon who was at the back also rushed into the battlefield, just in time to see the fellow tribesman who was smashed into broken bones by Su Fan. The Yiln Bone Demon screamed loudly, and saw the bones left after the blood sacrifice around him soaring into the sky. In a flash, the skeletons of these monsters gathered into an extremely huge bone ball in the sky, and then fell from the sky and hit Su Fan fiercely. Seeing the huge bone ball falling from the sky, Su Fan's figure instantly disappeared from the spot, but it was still a little too late. Boom! The huge bone ball fell heavily on the ground, and immediately produced an unimaginable terrifying explosion. The aftermath of the explosion set off a world-destroying storm, and everything within a radius of dozens of miles was swept into the torrent like fallen leaves. Su Fan, who was unable to dodge, was hit in the chest as if by a heavy hammer. The whole person was blown away like a rag doll, and fell several miles away, hitting the ground heavily, raising a cloud of dust. Puff! Su Fan spit out a mouthful of blood. He covered his chest, and barely struggled to stand up. At this time, most of the 5 super kill bone demons on the opposite side were also seriously injured. One of them was cut in half, and was desperately trying to merge the 2 halves of his body together. Unfortunately, because the Yang Yang Di Shan and Xian Di Tian. In addition to it, there was also the kill bone demon that Su Fan had knocked over before. It had recovered and struggled to get up from the ground. How are you? The inner city can't hold on any longer. At this time, Su Fan received a thought from Xiaoning in his mind. It seemed that the corrupted bone poison mist he launched had been broken through by the monsters in the netherworld. Now the inner city of the base was surrounded by endless monsters again, and it might be in danger at this time. Although the super kill bone demons on the opposite side were beaten half crippled by him in one encounter, they did achieve the purpose of entanglement with him. If these big demons are not dealt with as soon as possible, the teleportation hall of the Black Mountain base will definitely fall. Thinking of this, Su Fan was immediately anxious. No matter what the cost, he had to deal with the big demons in front of him as soon as possible. Su Fan took a deep breath, kicked the ground with his right foot, and his figure swept across several miles like thunder and lightning, carrying a terrible momentum, and crashed into a big demon on the opposite side. Kang Shang hits. A nearly 1,000-foot-tall ancient demonized Kang Shang suddenly rose up behind Su Fan, carrying a majestic momentum like a tidal wave, sweeping away with a mighty force. The scenery within 1,000 miles also changed. The periphery of the base, which was originally destroyed like the end of the world, disappeared, turning into an endless wilderness, with an ancient atmosphere everywhere. The big demon that Su Fan hit was the one who launched a magical power to sneak attack him. Facing such a fierce Su Fan, even it, a 9th-level big demon, couldn't help but feel a little scared at this time. It quickly launched a magical power, and saw the bones scattered around instantly soaring into the sky, and then gathered into a huge bone ball, blocking itself. Boom! Su Fan hit it regardless, and hit the bone ball that had not yet fully formed, smashing it into pieces in an instant. The collision produced an extremely powerful and terrifying impact force, causing the surrounding air to vibrate. Chapter 1143, No, it's going to explode. Su Fan, who smashed the huge bone ball, rushed towards the super yellow bone demon like an arrow from a bow. The dark demon breaking sword in his hand slashed horizontally, like a black whirlwind, wrapped in endless power, whizzing past the opponent. Ghost wheel slash, the dark sword wrapped in the power of the anode and the thunder of heaven and earth, like a black lightning, swept across the body of the yellow bone demon. For a moment, a terrifying sword light crossed the sky, and the sword was majestic, as if it was going to tear the world apart. The surrounding air was shattered layer by layer, making a sharp whistling sound. The earth-shaking mighty power erupted by the terrifying sword intent was like a surging and never-ending torrent. Wherever it passed, everything was ruthlessly collapsed and destroyed. The thought that Xiaoning had just sent showed that the inner city of the Black Mountain base was in danger and could not hold on for much longer. This made Su Fan extremely anxious. At this moment, he completely ignored his own consumption. He had only one thought in his mind, which was to get rid of these demons as soon as possible. He hoped that this sword would kill them with one blow and quickly end this difficult battle. However, reality poured cold water on him. The kill bone demons he faced were all former 9th-level demons. Even if they were forced to downgrade to a higher level in order to safely pass through the space gap, and their strength dropped by 99%. But a lean camel is bigger than a horse. No matter how bad it is, they still have the foundation of a 9th-level demon. At the moment when Su Fan drew his sword, this demon instantly sensed a fatal crisis. It reacted extremely quickly, and almost at the same moment when Su Fan swung his sword, it performed a magical power. The dense skeleton scattered around seemed to be controlled by an invisible and powerful hand, and instantly soared into the sky like an arrow from a string. These skeletons intertwined and collided violently in the air, making a creepy and spine-chilling sound. In the blink of an eye, they gathered into an extremely huge bone ball, which blocked the great demon tightly in front of it, like an indestructible shield. At this moment, the dark sword with thunder and flames, with the power of destroying the world, slashed fiercely on the bone ball. Boom! With a deafening and terrifying roar, the sword like containing a trace of the artistic conception of the Great Way, with unparalleled impact, instantly smashed the bone ball into pieces. This scene was like a nuclear bomb being detonated, countless bone fragments bursting wildly in all directions like hidden weapons, drawing cold light in the air, and leaving a mess wherever they went. The huge aftermath of the explosion shocked Su Fan back several miles away like a surging tide. The situation of the kill bone demon was even more miserable. It was directly blown away by the violent explosion, and fell more than 10 miles away before it fell heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Su Fan had just stabilized his body when he suddenly exerted force on his right foot and kicked the ground hard. The force seemed to be trampling through the earth. In an instant, his figure was like a thunder and lightning that cut through the sky, carrying a terrifying momentum that was enough to shock the world. It instantly swept across several miles and rushed straight towards the big demon opposite. At this moment, Su Fan felt his scalp tingling, and the pores all over his body trembled and stood up as if they were electrocuted. He turned his head suddenly and saw that the Killbone demon that he had pierced with a sword was like a surging and unstoppable torrent, carrying an endless breath of destruction, and whistling towards him madly. No, it's going to explode. Su Fan suddenly received the urgent warning thoughts of the evil Buddha Wangda in his mind. Without even thinking, he disappeared from the spot like a ghost. Boom! Then, a devastating sound was heard, and a shocking explosion broke out. The explosion created a bottomless pit on the ground, the surrounding land was overturned, and the rocks were shattered. The terrifying impact force of the earth-shaking explosion caused the surrounding air to vibrate violently, forming circles of air waves that were clearly visible to the naked eye, spreading wildly in all directions. Wherever it went, the bone fragments produced by the self-explosion of the great demon flew all over the sky, like countless sharp blades, cutting dense cracks in the surrounding space, and even the ground was plowed into deep gullies, leaving a devastated scene. Although Su Fan avoided the opponent's self-explosion in time, he was still shaken by a huge force and flew backwards. He flew more than 10 miles away before he could barely stabilize his body. However, before he could catch his breath, the only two intact Killbone demons that remained roared and rushed towards him from two different directions like hungry tigers. Su Fan didn't even think about it. With an indomitable momentum, he slashed down at the huge Killbone demon on the left. Sacrifice yourself and cut. In an instant, the void seemed to be torn open by an invisible giant hand, and a dazzling sword light burst out from it. This sword light was like the first ray of light when the ancient gods created the world, carrying the power to destroy the world and sweeping around with overwhelming force. Wherever the dazzling light reached, it was wrapped with an extremely sharp sword intent. This sword intent was like a majestic galaxy from the sky, breaking free from the shackles of the sky and falling straight down. The power contained in the terrifying sword light really cut the void into two huge, mirror-like areas. The space turbulence at the crack surged, and a sizzling sound continued to be heard. Facing such a terrifying sword that was enough to shake the world, even a 9th-level demon could not help but feel an irrepressible sense of fear in his heart. It reacted instinctively. The demonic power around it was released, and a powerful magical power was launched in an instant. The corpses and bones all over the ground seemed to be pulled by an invisible powerful force. They rose from the ground, spinning and condensing rapidly in the air. In the blink of an eye, a huge bone ball with a diameter of hundreds of feet was formed, which blocked it steadily. Not only that, the demon bones all over the body of the Yilnbone demon began to surge wildly. The demon bones originally attached to its body seemed to come alive, constantly twisting and deforming, and quickly gathered towards its back. In the blink of an eye, a huge bone bag with a high arch was formed behind it. The surface of the bone bag exuded a faint light, and dense runes kept flashing, condensing a more powerful defensive force. At this time, the terrifying sword light containing endless power finally fell from the sky, with an indomitable momentum, fiercely slashing on the huge bone ball. In an instant, a huge explosion that shocked people to the depths of their souls sounded. The power of this explosion was like a huge Mars carrying the power of destruction, hitting the earth at a speed exceeding the speed of light. The terrifying aftermath of the explosion, like a surging tsunami, instantly spread wildly around with the explosion point as the center. The ground within a radius of hundreds of miles cracked, and the bottomless crack spread in all directions like the mouth of a ferocious beast. The air ripples visible to the naked eye, wrapped in an invisible but extremely terrifying force, swept in all directions like waves of surging sea. Wherever it went, the surrounding space could no longer withstand the impact of this powerful force, and turned into dense cracks, spreading rapidly in all directions at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1144, Fighting him is extremely passive, even a disaster. At this moment, Su Fan had only one thought in his mind, that is, to completely kill the evil Yilnbone demon in front of him. He used all his strength in this sword, with an unstoppable determination, and no regrets, as if he was slashing the last sword of his life. After the terrifying sword light shattered the huge bone ball, it did not stop at all, and continued to slash at the super Yilnbone demon with endless sharpness. In the blink of an eye, the sword light slashed on the high-arched bone bag on the Yilnbone demon. Boom! Another deafening, earth-shattering and terrifying loud noise came. This sound was like two majestic tides from ancient times, colliding with each other with overwhelming force, and finally converging into a huge wave that covered the sky and the sun, with an extremely terrifying impact force, unscrupulously surging in all directions. The huge bone bag on the body of the Yellow Bone Demon was instantly shattered under this sharp sword. A large part of the body of the Kill Bone Demon suddenly sank, and the bones that were originally closely connected all over the body were like an ignited gunpowder barrel, exploding one after another. Its huge body, which was nearly 1,000 feet long, was chopped high up by the power of this sword. After drawing an arc in the air, it fell several miles away before crashing to the ground, raising a dust that covered the sky and the sun. Not only that, the deep purple Shiansi thunder power contained in Su Fan's sword, as well as the red anode ground evil, also invaded the body of the big demon like a smart venomous snake, following the sword light. For a moment, the red blazing flames, like a volcanic eruption, rushed up from the body of the Kill Bone Demon, covering it in a sea of fire. Dense and dazzling arcs also raged all over its body, making waves of creepy sizzling sounds, as if to completely electrocute its body into ashes. At this moment, the Kill Bone Demon that rushed over from the right side was already roaring like a runaway train, rushing over with rolling demonic power. Su Fan took a deep breath, his chest heaving violently, as if he wanted to take all the air around him into his body. He had just made a self-sacrifice slash, which not only consumed a lot of his blood and energy, but also had a great impact on his consciousness. It was too late to draw his sword again. Ouch! Su Fan roared loudly to the sky, his voice full of indomitable spirit and fighting spirit. With a boom of his right foot, a deep footprint was instantly stepped on the ground, and the cracked lines spread around like a spider web. In an instant, Su Fan's figure, with a majestic momentum like a tidal wave, rushed towards the Kill Bone Demon like a cannonball. Shang Shan Kao, a phantom of an ancient demonized blue bear nearly 1,000 feet tall suddenly rose behind him. This ancient demonized gray bear exudes a demonic power so strong that it is almost materialized. Its hair stands up like steel needles, and each hair gleams with a cold metallic luster, as if it can easily pierce steel. Its eyes are like two blood moons hanging high in the sky, emitting a frightening bloodthirsty light, as if it wants to devour everything in the world. With the appearance of this ancient demonized gray bear, the scenery within a radius of 1,000 miles changed instantly. The periphery of the base, which was originally destroyed by the battle and looked like a doomsday scene, disappeared without a trace in an instant, replaced by a vast expanse of wilderness. The wilderness is filled with an ancient and wild atmosphere, which is so heavy that it seems to freeze time, as if this is the source of time, and nothing has been tainted by civilization, only the most primitive power is surging. Compared with the previous gray bear phantom, this time it is obviously different. Every hair and every muscle of it is clearly visible, as if it really exists, and you can even feel the heat radiating from it. Even the changes in the surrounding scenery seemed extremely real, making people feel as if they were actually there, as if they were really in that ancient wilderness. However, at this time, Su Fan had no time to pay attention to these things, so he didn't notice any difference from the past. The most frightening thing was that at this moment, Su Fan's whole body was covered with dazzling electric lights, which were like a smart little snake, wandering around him and crackling. Moreover, a blazing red flame was burning on his body, and the flame danced wantonly with his movements. The ground where he passed was burned into scorched earth by this extremely hot temperature. Su Fan was like a crazy beast, with red eyes, and he rushed forward regardless of anything, and collided fiercely with a nearly 1,000-foot-long super Kill Bone Demon. Boom! The two huge demon bodies collided with each other, and the momentum was like Mars hitting the earth, which immediately caused a terrifying loud noise that almost overturned the entire sky. The visible sound waves were like the terrifying impact of violent air currents. With a collision point as the center, they spread out in all directions, causing the entire world within a radius of dozens of miles to vibrate violently, as if the whole world was about to fall apart under this force. In an instant, the shock wave of destruction swept in all directions, and the air was covered with visible ripples. Just like a piece of paper being twisted and wrinkled by an invisible hand, the space also became distorted under this force, and dense cracks appeared. Su Fan and the Kill Bone Demon were almost simultaneously shaken and flew backwards, falling several miles away. He felt severe pain all over his body, as if every inch of his bones were shattered, dizzy, and the world in front of him was spinning non-stop. He forced himself to hold back the blood that had accumulated in his chest, and his throat felt fishy and sweet. It took a lot of effort to prevent the blood from spurting out of his body. Su Fan endured the discomfort all over his body, gritted his teeth, swung the pitch-black sword in his hand, and slashed fiercely. Zhang, a sword chant that reached the sky and the earth rose up, shaking the space to the point where it was visible to the naked eye, and waves spread out from the sword to the surroundings. The boiling sword-light cut through the sky with endless power, and the whole world became extremely bright at this moment, which hurt people's eyes. The terrifying sword-light tore out from the void like a meteorite, and the heavy air was easily torn and pierced like a fragile piece of paper, making a harsh sound like cloth tearing, leaving a series of distorted traces in the air. Facing this bright sword-light that cut through the void, the Yilbone demon opposite actually felt a little timid in his heart, and let out a low roar unwillingly. If it weren't for the forced emotion, the human cultivator opposite would be no different from an insignificant reptile in its eyes. Maybe it could blow this guy to pieces with just a breath. But now its strength has been reduced to 99%. Even if it tries its best, it feels a little powerless against this human cultivator. There is no way. The big sword in the hands of the guy opposite, as well as the power of the anode and the earth and thunder on the other side, are all the nemesis of the monsters in their netherworld. In addition, this guy's abnormal and powerful body is extremely passive, and it is even a disaster to fight him. And its magical powers that were originally earth-shaking can't play the power they should at this time. Ouch! This Yilbone demon suddenly howled loudly to the sky, and his voice was full of unwillingness and anger. Dense magic patterns appeared all over his body, and the magic patterns flashed with strange light. The dark magic mist was filled around him, and the magic mist was like a demon with bared fangs and claws, circling around it. Boom! The skeletons within a radius of dozens of miles around it suddenly soared into the sky. Those skeletons seemed to be controlled by an invisible big hand, and in an instant, an extremely thick bone stick was formed on its head. The bone stick became thicker and thicker, until it condensed to more than 1,000 feet high, standing upright between heaven and earth, as if to support this broken sky. Boom! With a dull roar, the huge bone stick standing between heaven and earth, with a terrifying destructive force, fell down towards Su Fan's swordlight like the sky collapsed and the earth collapsed. Boom! The two earth-shattering attacks collided fiercely, and immediately produced a huge explosion that destroyed the world. The entire void seemed to collapse at this moment, and the destructive energy was annihilating and expanding. A huge energy vortex was formed, causing the sky to tremble at this moment, and then it was instantly submerged by the mighty light, which was mixed with energy turbulence of various colors, like the end of the world. Chapter 1145 Fortunately I came back in time. The huge bone stick, which was over 1,000 feet long and exuded a rotten smell, fell rapidly from the sky like a collapsed giant peak, accompanied by the sound of roaring wind. However, as soon as it appeared, it was met with Su Fan's sharp sword that contained the power to destroy the world. In an instant, the bone stick fell apart like fragile glass, turning into dense broken bones flying in all directions. Although these broken bones seemed messy, they successfully blocked the terrifying sword light that was enough to tear the sky apart. Then, a terrifying explosion that was enough to overturn the entire sky broke out. The deafening sound formed a terrifying sound wave visible to the naked eye that raged wildly around. The entire sky seemed to be overwhelmed and was shattered at this moment, as if it was about to collapse completely. The space was like a broken mirror, and shocking cracks spread wantonly. All things dissipated and shattered under the impact of this violent force. Su Fan suddenly felt a surge of mighty power coming at him, and he was like a kite with a broken string, being shaken so hard that he flew backwards. He drew a long arc in the air, and only managed to stabilize his body with his strong physical strength after flying several miles away. Almost at the same time, the Yilbone demon on the opposite side was not spared, and was also shaken away by this powerful force. Its huge bone body of more than 1,000 feet was like a falling meteor, falling heavily more than 10 miles away. After landing, its body rolled uncontrollably on the ground for more than 10 times, bringing up a large amount of dust, and finally stopped. The Yilbone demon struggled to get up from the ground, and before it could recover, it saw a figure like thunder and lightning, sweeping across dozens of miles at an astonishing speed, and instantly rushed in front of it with an extremely terrifying momentum. Su Fan had transformed into a huge demon body hundreds of feet tall, exuding a chilling aura, as if carrying a huge force of tens of millions of pounds, like a towering mountain, rushing towards the Yilbone demon. Stone Ape Axe, a 1,000-foot-tall ancient demon stone ape phantom instantly rose behind Su Fan. This phantom exuded an ancient and mysterious aura. It raised its extremely thick ape arm, carrying the momentum of overwhelming mountains and seas, and chopped it down with one arm, Seeing Su Fan's demon arm like an indestructible giant axe, carrying the momentum of destroying the world, the Yellow Bone Demon was shocked and quickly used the magical power. A huge demon bone on its huge bone body exploded with a boom without any warning. An invisible but extremely impactful ripple broke out, vibrating around like a ripple. Wherever this ripple passed, the surrounding space seemed to be twisted and reversed by an invisible big hand. The demon arm that was originally falling straight down was instantly diverted by this strange force. Boom! Su Fan's extremely powerful stone ape axe chopped heavily on the ground next to the Killbone Demon. The powerful force instantly tore the earth apart, creating a bottomless pit. The pit was filled with billowing smoke and dust, and the surrounding land cracked like a spider web, with cracks spreading into the distance. Taking advantage of this gap, the huge bone body of the Killbone Demon rolled violently and instantly rolled out of Su Fan's attack range. What the hell? Su Fan was secretly angry in his heart. When he missed the attack, his figure was like a ghost, following at lightning speed. He raised the sword in his hand high, and with a sound of whistling wind, he slashed at the Killbone Demon. Su Fan's eyes condensed, and the two powerful forces of heaven and earth thunder and anode and earth evil in his body were injected into the demon-breaking sword in his hand at the same time, like two roaring dragons. With a boom, the originally dark sword body instantly flashed with lightning and flames. The two forces blended and entangled with each other, forming a strange and powerful force, as if to completely destroy all the evil in the world. Su Fan's fighting style has always been known for its plundering like fire. His attacks are continuous like a storm, which also shocked the Yellow Bone Demon. At this time, the Yellow Bone Demon was already unable to dodge, and had no choice but to grit his teeth and prepare to resist this fatal blow. I saw that the magic smoke was billowing all over its body, and the magic bones attached to its body surface were like life, constantly twisting and deforming, and converging towards its back at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, a huge bone bag with a high arch was formed on its back. The surface of the bone bag exuded a faint light, and the dense runes kept flashing, condensing a more powerful defensive force. Puff, however, due to the rush of time, the bone bag on the back of the Yellow Bone Demon had not yet completely condensed into shape. The dark sword in Su Fan's hand, like a black lightning, easily cut through the bone bag. As the blade of the demon-breaking sword sank into the body of the Yellow Bone Demon, the manic thunder of heaven and earth and the scorching anode of the earth also swarmed in like a flood that broke through the dam, and invaded the body of the Yellow Bone Demon all at once. The demon-breaking sword that cut into the body of the Yellow Bone Demon was like a greedy glutton, with runes flashing on the sword body, madly devouring the vitality of the Yellow Bone Demon. Every trace of vitality that was extracted made the bone body of the Yellow Bone Demon tremble slightly. At the same time, the manic thunder of heaven and earth wandered wantonly in its body, like a violent thunder snake, constantly slashing and exploding. The scorching Yangjidisha was like a blazing fire of purgatory, burning the internal organs of the Yellow Bone Demon and making a sizzling sound. Ouch! This Yellow Bone Demon could no longer bear such severe pain, and immediately let out a shrill wail, full of pain and unwillingness. It tried to break free from this endless pain and struggled to get up from the ground. But how could Su Fan give it a chance to breathe? A trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and he suddenly raised his thick demon arm, carrying 1,000 pounds of force, and chopped it down fiercely. Stone ape axe, dragon elephant tread, turbulent tiger collapse. Next, Su Fan tried his best to perform Zangaikuin, and every move contained all his strength, and launched a crazy attack on this Yellow Bone Demon. This Yellow Bone Demon had already been tortured by the demon-breaking sword, the thunder of heaven and earth, and the Yangjidisha to the point of being worse than death. How could it withstand Su Fan's heavy blows? Under the violent storm-like attack, in just a short while, the 1,000-foot-long bone body of this super Yellow Bone Demon began to crack, and then it fell apart, turning into countless densely packed broken demon bones, scattered on the ground like raindrops. Finally, I have solved this big guy. Su Fan panted heavily, sweat slid down his cheeks, and his eyes showed a trace of relief after exhaustion. He turned around and looked at the last Yellow Bone Demon in the distance. This guy was already seriously injured by Su Fan's sword that contained the artistic conception of the Great Dao. At this time, he was trying his best to operate his magic power, trying to drive away the thunder and lightning and the positive pole of the earth that were raging in his body. Every time the magic power was operated, it was accompanied by a painful low groan. The two forces in the body were like two giant dragons biting each other, making it miserable. At this time, it realized that its fellow had fallen, and its heart tightened, knowing that it didn't have much time. This Yilbone demon was determined to gather all the magic power, and tried its best to gather the thunder and lightning and the positive pole and the evil spirit in its body to a corner of its body. Boom! With a loud bang, it detonated half of its body, and bone fragments flew everywhere. This was considered to be a complete solution to the thunder and lightning and the positive pole and the evil spirit in its body. However, the price was so high that it was full of regret and unwillingness. It destroyed half of its body. In order to survive, it did not hesitate to cut off its tail to survive. At this moment, it had already tried its best. This Yilbone demon tried its best to get up from the ground, and its body was still trembling slightly because of the explosion just now. But before it could stand firm, it heard a sharp and piercing whistle that cut through the sky. Shoo! Then a demon body hundreds of feet tall jumped into the sky like a meteor, and then with endless momentum, it swung its sword with both hands and slashed at it. Before the Yilbone demon could react, the pitch-black sword over 10 feet long had already slashed down with an endless sense of oppression. The whole world seemed to be frozen by this powerful force at this moment, and time seemed to stand still. The surrounding space began to distort, and the light was deformed by this force. Boom! With a devastating roar, the pitch-black sword came whistling. The breath of destruction spread, and the void shattered like broken glass wherever it passed. The terrifying mighty force made the air like visible ripples, oscillating wildly, and like a violently shaking mirror, as if it would collapse and shatter in the next moment. The dust and smoke dissipated, leaving only a deep gully over 100 miles long on the ground. And the Yilbone demon had disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed in this world. Seeing that several super Yilbone demons had been killed, Su Fan did not hesitate at all. His figure disappeared from the spot in an instant, leaving only a residual shadow slightly rippling in the air. When his figure appeared again, he had already arrived at the outer city of the Black Mountain base. At this moment, the scene in front of him made Su Fan's pupils shrink instantly. The dense monsters in the entire Black Mountain base fortress were surging like a tide. Their roars were deafening, and they were rushing towards the inner city desperately. The surging situation was like a rushing river, unstoppable. The walls of the inner city had long been lost under the fierce attack of the monsters, and the ruins were filled with a bloody atmosphere. Now, only the area around the teleportation hall is left, and the monks of the human race are relying on a few buildings and are still stubbornly defending. Their figures seemed so small under the heavy siege of the monsters. Xiaoning and others were in it, and they were already in danger. Endless monsters pressed in like a dark cloud, forcing them into a desperate situation, and they were brushing shoulders with death every moment. The gate of the teleportation hall could be breached and fell at any time under the crazy attack of the monsters. Su Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, secretly feeling lucky. Fortunately, he came back in time. If he came a step later, the teleportation hall would have fallen, and all his efforts would have been in vain. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1146. Why hasn't that guy come back yet? At this moment, Xiaoning and the others were already bloodshot, their eyes were full of bloodshot, and their expressions were almost crazy. The 8th and 9th level immortal talismans were thrown out like snowflakes in their hands, as if they were free of charge. Each immortal talisman contained the power to destroy the world. Wherever the immortal talismans went, the light shone, the roar was endless, and the densely packed monsters in front of them, like a tide, were wiped out in an instant. However, this piece of open space that was finally cleared was completely filled with endless monsters like surging waves in an instant. Senior sister, I will go first. A fellow disciple who was seriously injured and rugged, forced his shaky body to bow to Xiaoning with difficulty, his eyes full of determination. As soon as the voice fell, he rushed towards the overwhelming group of monsters opposite without hesitation. Boom! A loud earth-shaking sound shook the earth. The terrifying impact of the fellow disciple's self-detonation was like a nuclear bomb explosion, instantly clearing the dense monsters in front of him, forming a short vacuum zone. But this short calm was just a moment of peace in the storm. In the blink of an eye, endless monsters came again like a tide, filling the large empty space without a single gap. There was no way, they could not be killed, they could not be killed at all. The monsters in the netherworld seemed endless, and their number was so despairing. They were like black tides, boundless and spread all over every corner of the black mountain base, and every inch of land was covered by their figures. Seeing another fellow disciple turned into dust in front of her eyes, Xiao Ning burst into tears. In this short period of time, more than a dozen fellow disciples who had lost their combat effectiveness after being seriously injured had resolutely chosen to die with the monsters in order not to drag everyone down and to protect their last dignity. Xiao Ning could only watch the familiar faces disappear in front of her, her heart full of powerlessness and grief, but she was powerless. This feeling was like a sharp blade, piercing her heart. She knew very well that once the teleportation hall fell, she would make the same choice without hesitation. They would rather be torn to pieces and their souls scattered than become food in the mouths of countless monsters and suffer endless humiliation. Boom boom, with a deafening roar that seemed to tear the world apart, the last spiritual shield covering the teleportation hall shattered and collapsed like fragile glass under the crazy attacks of the monsters. Xiao Ning couldn't help but sigh in her heart, and her full expectations turned into bubbles in an instant. I still didn't wait for that guy. The loss of the last defensive formation meant that the teleportation hall was doomed to fail, and their resistance would soon become futile. My fellow disciples, see you in the next life, Xiao Ning shouted loudly with all her strength. Her voice was full of determination, but also revealed a deep unwillingness. Sister, see you in the next life. Sister, see you in the next life. Sister, see you in the next life. Now, after a brutal battle, there are less than 1,000 monks left guarding the teleportation hall. Hearing Xiao Ning's cry, everyone used up their last bit of strength and responded loudly. Their voices full of the heroic spirit of facing death with indifference and sacrificing their lives. On this desperate battlefield, their voices seemed so tragic. At this time, inside the teleportation hall, Xiao Quan was anxious and paced back and forth in the hall. His steps were hurried and flustered. Why hasn't that guy come back yet? He muttered in a low voice, his brows furrowed, his eyes full of anxiety and uneasiness. Xiao Quan's elder sister arranged him and Shen Yu to guard the interior of the teleportation hall. The combat effectiveness of the two of them was very poor, and they could not help much outside. Anyway, the interior of the teleportation hall also needed people to guard, so they never fought on the front line. Xiao Quan suddenly turned his head and saw Shen Yu sitting cross-legged on the ground, holding several evil human bone tools with a strange look. Shen Yu's eyes were closed, his lips were trembling slightly, and he was mumbling to himself, saying strange and evil spells that no one could understand. The spell seemed to come from the Nine Nether Hell, carrying a mysterious and terrifying power that made the air around him tremble. Pa! Shen Yu suddenly threw several evil human bone tools to the ground, and then he suddenly opened his eyes. Those eyes were red as blood, as if burning with two strange flames, staring at the evil human bone tools on the ground, with a kind of madness and persistence in his eyes. Teng, Shen Yu was suddenly pulled up by an invisible force and jumped up from the ground. Meet, turn misfortune into good fortune, great, great fortune, he screamed like a madman, his voice was sharp and piercing, and then rushed out of the teleportation hall. At this time, outside the teleportation hall, facing the monsters swarming like a tide, Xiao Ning and others were ready to die with the monsters, with determination and fearlessness in their eyes. Master, Uncle Master, great, great luck, turn danger into safety. At this time, Shen Yu stared with bloodshot eyes, screamed loudly, and rushed out of the hall crazily, as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. Xiao Ning and others heard his words, and all showed a bitter smile on their faces, which was full of helplessness and despair. At this time, when life and death are on the line, you can still say such inexplicable words. Now countless monsters are close at hand, the teleportation hall is about to fall, and their lives are in danger, but he said something about turning danger into safety at this time, which is simply ridiculous. Boom! Just when everyone was filled with despair, a huge demon body hundreds of feet high suddenly fell from the sky like a meteor falling from the sky, with unparalleled momentum, and landed heavily on the square in front of the teleportation hall. Under the impact of this powerful force, the ground cracked instantly, and cracks spread around like spider webs. Boom! Then, a red-hot halo popped out from his body, like a burning sun, and instantly swept around. Wherever it went, the air was instantly ignited, making a sizzling sound. The densely packed monsters gathered in the inner city, under this extremely hot red halo, instantly turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. Then, another jet of black poisonous fog swarmed out of Su Fan's demon body, like a black dragon, and instantly spread rapidly around. As the corrupted bone poisonous fog continued to spread, it enveloped the entire Black Mountain base fortress in the blink of an eye. Wherever the poisonous fog passed, there was a disgusting stench. As the thick poisonous fog rolled over, the dense monsters that had originally gathered at the Black Mountain base were instantly transformed into pools of disgusting pus under the erosion of the poisonous fog, making a sizzling corrosion sound. In just a dozen breaths, the dense and seemingly endless monsters that had originally gathered at the Black Mountain base fortress had all been corroded by the corrupted bone poisonous fog into pools of pus emitting a foul smell. Not only that, the thick poisonous fog spread over the walls of the Black Mountain base. An indestructible and stable defense line was formed outside the base, blocking the endless and constantly pouring monsters outside the Black Mountain base. Although the dense monsters were like a tide that overturned the mountains and seas, fearlessly rushed towards the thick corrupted bone poisonous fog. But as soon as they came into contact with the poisonous fog, they were instantly corroded into pools of disgusting pus, as if this poisonous fog was a death gap that they could not cross. Looking at the empty square outside the teleportation hall, where no monsters were seen, Xiaoning felt her body go limp, swayed, and then sat down on the ground. The others were like her, as if all their strength had been drained away, and they all fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Xiaoning and the others had long been at the end of their rope. In the previous battle, they had been fighting tenaciously with only their courage. Now that the crisis was temporarily lifted, the courage that had been supporting them was suddenly removed, and the exhaustion came like a tide, making them feel extremely weak and exhausted. Xiaoning and the others collapsed on the ground, their eyes still filled with a trance of surviving a disaster. Looking at the huge demon body hundreds of feet tall standing in the base, they all felt a sense of relief and emotion for surviving a disaster. They knew very well that if this guy had not arrived in time, the teleportation hall in the inner city of the Black Mountain base fortress would have definitely fallen. Chapter 1147 How can you say such a thing? Su Fan stood in the inner city of the Black Mountain base, slowly scanning the surrounding environment. He saw that the corpses piled up like mountains around the Black Mountain base, and the white bones glowed coldly in the dim light, as if the end of the world had come, and the breath of death and despair was everywhere. He also cast his eyes on Xiaoning and others who collapsed outside the inner city transmission hall. The Black Mountain base, which once had hundreds of thousands of monks, now had less than 1,000 survivors. The trauma brought by this catastrophe was really shocking. The entire Black Mountain base fortress was like a huge meat grinder, and the casualties of both sides combined were at least 1 or 2 million. Su Fan knew very well that the cruel curtain of this war had just been opened, and the next battlefield would surely be a more thrilling and tragic fight. When this war came to an end, it was still unknown how many people would die on both sides. Seeing that the rotten bone poison fog temporarily blocked the offensive of the monsters in the netherworld, isolating them outside the Black Mountain base, Su Fan couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and he removed his demonized body and returned to his true human form. Maintaining the demonized state for a long time was too exhausting for him. If he fought alone, he could barely hold on, but in such a tragic war between realms, it was really beyond his ability to continue to demonize. The next battle would only become more tragic, because this was the last chance for the netherworld. If they could not capture the teleportation hall of the Black Mountain base, they would be defeated. Once the space was stable, the fusion realm masters of Mangutan would be able to continuously support the Black Mountain base through the teleportation formation, and then the netherworld would have no chance of winning. Su Fan found a secluded corner and slowly sat cross-legged. He took out a sparkling jade bottle from the ring, poured out a few top-grade key replenishing pills that exuded rich spiritual energy, and stuffed them into his mouth. Su Fan closed his eyes and concentrated, running the technique to try to dissolve the drug power as quickly as possible. Just now, in order to kill those super kill bone demons as soon as possible, Su Fan did not hesitate to consume a lot of mana and consciousness, and performed several powerful moves in succession. The big boss of the Wuman Upper Realm had already clearly told him that even if he set up the Blood Shadow Descending Array through blood sacrifice, it could only help him recover once today. Therefore, in the future battles, Su Fan no longer has any external force to rely on, and can only rely on his own reserves to deal with it. After a while, Su Fan slowly opened his eyes. He has taken this kind of elixir many times in the past few days, and even the best ki boosting elixir has not worked well. The netherworld is a place without spirits. The monks of barbarian bone heaven are fighting here. It is undoubtedly an away game. Lacking the support of spiritual resources, the monk's consumption is far from being compensated by ki-boosting elixir alone. Su Fan turned his head and suddenly found that Xiaoning had quietly sat cross-legged beside him without knowing when. Her long hair, which was originally as soft as silk, was now messily scattered on her shoulders. And a few strands of hair were tightly stuck to her pale cheeks because of sweat. A layer of dim veil covered his exhausted eyes, and the former lively brilliance disappeared completely, replaced by deep weariness. "You saved me again." Xiaoning's voice was no longer as crisp and pleasant as before, but full of hoarseness and fatigue. "You think too much, I'm just saving myself." Xiaoning was annoyed and raised his hand to hide him lightly. "Can't you speak more tactfully? Tell me the truth. Can we defend the teleportation hall?" Xiaoning looked worried, and looked straight at Su Fan. Su Fan shook his head helplessly and said, "To be honest, I'm not sure. But I know that the netherworld will go all out and attack at all costs next. This is their last chance." Xiaoning smiled bitterly and sighed, which was almost the same as what she thought in her heart. Even if Su Fan's strength is against the sky, facing the crazy counterattack of the netherworld, whether they can finally defend the teleportation hall of the Black Mountain base is still an unknown. "I can't die." Before Xiaoning finished her words, she was choked by endless grief, tears welling up in her eyes. Her shoulders shrugged slightly, and she curled up on Su Fan's shoulder involuntarily, like a helpless little animal after being injured. Su Fan did not move, turned his head and glanced at Xiaoning. A trace of pity arose in his heart, and let her lean on his shoulder. Although Xiaoning was heroic and generous on weekdays, she was a woman after all. Especially in this critical moment of life and death, she was full of panic and anxiety, but she couldn't find anyone to talk to. After all, it was really difficult to speak these words in front of many junior brothers in the sect. "You know, I haven't had a Taoist partner yet." Su Fan laughed and said, "The relationship between Taoist partners is just like that. At the beginning, the two of them are sweet and swear to each other, but as time goes by, they may become buddies." Xiaoning sat up straight and stared at Su Fan with sharp eyes. "You are talking nonsense. Many Taoist partners live happily and support each other all their lives." Su Fan raised the corner of his mouth and teased, "You read less of those storybooks on weekdays. They are all lies, and they are specially used to deceive you ignorant youngsters." Xiaoning's face flushed red instantly, and she turned her head hurriedly, fearing that Su Fan would see her embarrassment. Su Fan almost laughed out loud. It seems that this senior sister of the true demon god sect is often addicted to those Mary Sue novels. Female novels are killing people. It's good for two people to be friends, at least they have a family. There are many who end up being enemies. Xiaoning's face turned serious after hearing this, and she asked seriously, "According to what you said, no two people can love each other for a lifetime?" Su Fan thought for a while and said, "It's not impossible. For example, if two people are forced to separate when they are in love, even if they can't stay together in the future, they may still miss each other for a lifetime." "You just make up nonsense." "Why did I hear people say?" Xiaoning was interrupted by Su Fan before he finished speaking. "I have lived two lives, and I have nothing to do to chat about these things with a girl who knows nothing. Sister, we can't even say whether we can survive today. Is it appropriate to chat about these messes?" Xiaoning's eyes became empty and confused again after hearing this, and she stared blankly into the distance. Su Fan looked at Xiaoning's melancholy expression, and couldn't help feeling a little bit of pity in his heart. If they failed to defend the teleportation hall in the end, they really couldn't bear to see the girl in front of them, leaving this world forever with such deep regrets. After hesitating for a while, he still asked, "Has your family never introduced you to a Taoist partner?" Xiaoning was slightly stunned, and then sighed. "Of course they have introduced you, but you also know that they are all marriages for the benefit of the family. I am not interested in that form. It's over. The girl is still a love-brained person. That's really hopeless. Anyway, you can't change the family arrangement, so you might as well find someone who agrees with you and marry him. Before marriage, make an agreement with him to live your own lives, and after marriage, maintain superficial respect, and then quietly look for someone you really like." Xiaoning turned her head abruptly, her eyes full of anger, staring straight at Su Fan. In her eyes, Su Fan's words were simply heresy. "You, how can you say such a thing?" She was so angry that her voice trembled a little, and she was shocked and disappointed with Su Fan's ideas. Su Fan laughed indifferently and continued to tease. Anyway, you can't disobey your family's decision, so why not try it as I say? In fact, sneaking around is exciting. He wanted to ease the embarrassment with a relaxed tone, but found that Xiaoning's eyes became colder and colder, staring at him intently, with deep contempt in her eyes. Bang! Bang! At this time, the demon-killing bell in the inner city suddenly made a dull and rapid sound. Su Fan and Xiaoning came back to their senses in an instant, and without thinking, they jumped up from the ground and hurriedly ran towards the wall of the inner city. At this time, the silent battlefield became lively again, and the attack of the Netherrealm began. Chapter 1148. Every minute and every second is extremely precious. Buzz, buzz, the piercing whistling sound, like a sharp arrow, tore through the tranquility of the Black Mountain base fortress. In an instant, a violent gust of wind suddenly rose from all directions of the base, like the roar of evil spirits from the nine nether hell. The rotten bone poison mist that Su Fan arranged around the base was like an indestructible barrier, but under the ravages of this gloomy wind, it was blown away like thin paper in an instant and disappeared without a trace. Without the obstruction of the rotten bone poison mist, endless monsters were like a raging flood that had been opened, rushing towards the Black Mountain base with an overwhelming force. The densely packed figure seemed to swallow up the whole world. This is fucking. Su Fan saw that the poisonous fog he arranged was so easily broken by the netherworld, and his heart sank, and he sighed helplessly. It seems that the monsters in the netherworld have already found a countermeasure against his magical powers. Even if these magical powers are used again in the future, their power will be greatly reduced. But at this time, no matter what, we must stop the fierce attacks of these monsters. If we can hold on for a moment longer, we will win more chances for the base. Thinking of this, Su Fan suddenly raised his arms, and his aura suddenly surged. Boom! A light blue breath roared out of his body like a beast that broke free from the cage, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a steaming water vapor that rushed straight into the sky. The vast starry sky in the crack above the Black Mountain base was instantly covered by dark clouds. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds were like a huge curtain, covering the sky of the entire base tightly. The heavy clouds seemed to be about to collapse the sky, and they were within reach. The clouds violently surged, just like a galloping army, passing through the sky with great momentum. Crack! A dazzling electric light streaked across the night sky like a sharp blade, and thunder exploded between the dark clouds, instantly illuminating the entire world. The dazzling light was terrifying. Bang! Then, a drop of rain fell heavily on the dense group of monsters. This seemingly ordinary raindrop contained great power, and instantly smashed a huge deep pit on the ground. At the same time, the temperature around dropped suddenly, and the pale white frost spread rapidly upward from the bottom of the pit like a ferocious venomous snake, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a piece of cold ice, freezing everything around tightly together. Countless monsters that were charging towards the base were instantly frozen into human-shaped ice sculptures. They maintained the posture of charging before death, but had lost their vitality. The pale white frost flowers did not stop there, and continued to spread wildly around. Those monsters were frightened and panicked, and fled everywhere. But the frost spread too fast, and they were soon caught up by the frost, and turned into cold ice sculptures one by one. Bang! Bang! More and more raindrops fell from the sky. At first, it was sparse, but in a blink of an eye, it became more and more rapid, and under the influence of the strong wind, it turned into a violent storm. In the dark night sky, dark clouds rolled and heavy rain poured down. The rain curtain seemed to be an insurmountable natural moat, covering the sky within a radius of 100 miles of the Black Mountain base. These raindrops, which seemed to be the size of rice grains, were now like powerful meteorites, hitting the ground heavily, and each drop could smash a huge deep pit on the ground. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the frost spread rapidly, spreading around the Black Mountain base at an astonishing speed. In a moment, the Black Mountain base within a radius of 100 miles had turned into a cold world. Everything was silent, and the cold wind was as cold as a knife. Wherever it blew, it seemed that there were demons and ghosts wailing. Although Su Fan had released his demonized body, he was still in the late stage of the refining void realm after receiving the initiation from the god of the Witch Gate. The magical power of 9 Nether Yellow Spring Rain that he used now was much more powerful than before. Just one 9 Nether Yellow Spring Rain wiped out all the monsters within 100 miles around the Black Mountain base. Not only that, the ice and snow around the Black Mountain base was like a natural barrier, temporarily blocking the attack of endless monsters and buying a precious breathing space for the base. If I'm not mistaken, it should be 9 nether mysterious water. Well, you're not mistaken, but how did he collect so much 9 nether mysterious water? Although 9 nether mysterious water is not uncommon, even the elite disciples of the immortal sex magic can collect so much, they would be crushed to death. I was fortunate enough to collect a few drops of 9 nether mysterious water, and I took a lot of effort to bring it back to the mountain gate. At this moment, the disciples of the true demon god sect who survived in the inner city were almost all cultivators in the refining void realm, and their knowledge was certainly extraordinary. Seeing Su Fan perform the 9 nether yellow spring rain, they were all amazed. They whispered to each other, their eyes full of shock and confusion. Xiaoning also turned her head and looked at the guy not far away. She couldn't calm down for a long time. Since she saw Su Fan, this guy has constantly refreshed her cognition. She didn't know how he grew up in that small world. In her eyes, there was both admiration for Su Fan's powerful strength and a hint of curiosity, wanting to see him thoroughly from the inside out. Boom. Boom. Su Fan's 9 nether yellow spring rain also bought precious time for the defense of the inner city. After the unremitting efforts of the true demon god sect formation monks, they finally repaired a defense formation of the inner city. Several spiritual shields rose into the air, covering the inner city of the Black Mountain base. The spiritual shields emitted a soft but tough light, which also brought some peace of mind to the people in the inner city. Su Fan and Xiaoning looked up at the spiritual shields above their heads, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Although the several defensive formations in the inner city could not hold out for long under the attack of countless monsters in the netherworld, they would be blown up. As I said before, the longer they could hold out, the better. At this moment, every minute and every second was extremely precious. Boom. Boom. At this time, with a series of earth-shaking roars, one after another black meteorites fell from the sky. Those meteorites dragged long black tails, as if they were messengers from hell, carrying a breath of destruction. These black meteorites fell to the ground, and suddenly filled with thick and endless magic smoke. The ice and snow world within a radius of 100 miles around the base turned into water in the blink of an eye. The magic smoke rolled, like a demon with bared fangs and claws, quickly eroding the land that had just been baptized by the 9 nether yellow spring rain. Then, endless monsters swarmed in from all directions, filling up the Black Mountain base within a radius of 100 miles in an instant. They roared and screamed, and their dense figures were daunting, as if they were a black tide that was about to drown everything. Su Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't expect that the 9 nether yellow spring rain he cast would be dissolved by the monsters of the netherworld so quickly. Although this 9 nether yellow spring rain caused great damage to countless monsters, the netherworld didn't care about these casualties at this time. They seemed to be emotionless killing machines, pouring out of the darkness continuously, one after another, and launching a crazy attack on the Black Mountain base. No matter how powerful Su Fan is, he can't use powerful magical powers endlessly. As the realm of the cultivator continues to improve, although the power of immortal methods and Taoist arts will become more and more powerful, the consumption will also increase accordingly. At this moment, Su Fan could clearly feel the loss of mana in his body. His blood and ki were a little weak due to the continuous battles. His consciousness was like a taut string, which would break if he was not careful. Facing the crazy attack of the endless monsters in the netherworld, how could Su Fan dare to use his ultimate move without restraint? Moreover, Su Fan's mana, blood and consciousness were not enough for him to squander at will. Now it was a tragic battle in the realm, which was completely different from his previous battles with others. Su Fan had been fighting non-stop at the Black Mountain base for several days. If he had not used the Blood Shadow Descending Gatare to launch a blood sacrifice to restore his blood, he would probably be in a state of exhaustion now. Chapter 1149. You guys try your best to guard the teleportation hall. Awoo. Awoo. As waves of shrill howls sounded, the void world seemed to be overwhelmed and trembled violently. The tremors were like invisible ripples, spreading wildly in all directions. The shrill howls seemed to climb out from the deepest part of the 9 nether hell, carrying the resentment and madness of endless years, and reverberating wantonly between heaven and earth. Each howl was like a sharp blade, cutting through the void, making the entire world like fragile thin paper, trembling violently under the heavy burden. Bang! Bang! Then, dull and heavy footsteps came from afar. The sound seemed to come from the terrifying giant beast that had been dormant since the beginning of chaos, slowly waking up, getting closer and closer, and becoming clearer and clearer. The overwhelming pressure, like a surging black tide, carrying the terrifying momentum of swallowing everything, instantly submerged the entire world. Xiaoning and the monks in the inner city lost all color on their faces in an instant, and their expressions of extreme fear seemed to be deeply engraved on their faces by the knife of fate. Their breathing was rapid and heavy, and their chests rose and fell violently, as if they were struggling for life and death. In front of this terrifying power, everyone deeply realized that their lives were as fragile as ants, as if a breeze could crush them into dust. Su Fan also frowned. This suffocating sense of oppression was very similar to the feeling when he encountered those super killed bone demons. But the breath that spread at this moment revealed an unprecedented strange feeling. Look there. At this time, a loud cry of fear and despair, like a heavy hammer, broke the brief silence. Su Fan, Xiaoning and others, as if being pulled by an invisible mysterious force, all looked in the direction of the man's finger involuntarily. In the distance, between the mountains, thick black fog like ink was surging wildly. In the swirling fog, a huge monster over 1,000 feet tall slowly emerged. Its body was as huge as a mountain, and its skin was a strange blue-gray color. The color was like an ancient curse that was covered by the dust of time, exuding a disgusting smell. The skin was covered with twisted textures, and those textures were like countless hideous blood vessels wriggling, as if this monster was not made of entities, but was condensed by endless evil resentment. Is this the wicker ghost? No, the wicker ghost is not so big. The breath of this big guy is too strong. Could it be a 9th level demon? That's not the case, but its breath is infinitely close to that of a 9th level demon. Everyone talked one after another, full of shock and panic, and their voices trembled slightly in this terrifying atmosphere. Xiaoning turned his head and looked at Su Fan next to him, and found that his face was also full of solemnity. You were entangled by them just now, right? Su Fan nodded and said, this is a super wicker ghost that was created by the Netherworld realm using a secret method to fuse together several wicker ghosts. What I just encountered was a super killed bone demon. After hearing Su Fan's words, Xiaoning's face instantly turned as pale as paper. Although Su Fan did not elaborate on the battle just now, she could imagine the cruelty and brutality of that battle with her imagination. Facing the super monster that was formed by the fusion of several monsters, even someone as powerful as Su Fan seemed to have a hard time. If it were them, they could only let it slaughter them. Look, there's another one over there. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone saw 3 more super monsters appearing around the Black Mountain base, 1 wicker ghost and 2 snot monsters. These super monsters exuded a disgusting smell, as if it was a mixture of various rotten substances. Wherever the breath went, the land sizzled as if corroded by strong acid, and wisps of black smoke came out, as if the earth was groaning in pain under this evil breath. Wisps of black smoke came out, as if the earth was groaning in pain under this evil breath. It seems that it is not so easy for the Netherworld to merge this kind of super monster. These super 8th level monsters are obviously temporarily pieced together and merged. The breath emanating from them is mixed and unstable, like a chaotic energy storm, which cannot be compared with those super killed bone monsters at all. I will be responsible for dealing with these super monsters. You try your best to defend the teleportation hall. Hearing Su Fan's words, Xiaoning nodded heavily, with a flash of determination and expectation in his eyes. Whether the teleportation hall of the Black Mountain base can be defended depends on Su Fan alone. Xiaoning now has only one strong thought, that is, Su Fan can turn the tide and help them defend the teleportation hall in the inner city of the base. Ouch! At this time, a wild and aggressive howl came from far away, followed by a loud boom, as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was splitting, and the whole world was shaking in this loud noise. A willow ghost more than 1,000 feet tall fell from the sky with a terrifying momentum of destroying the world, and landed heavily outside the inner city defense formation. The moment it landed, the ground seemed to be hit by a huge meteorite, and a huge bottomless pit was instantly smashed out. Bang! Bang! The dense tentacles all over the body of this super willow ghost were like countless agile and deadly pythons, madly whipping the outermost spiritual shield. Every time it whipped, a dazzling spark splashed, and the spark seemed to contain endless destructive power. Under the lashing of its dense tentacles, the seemingly rock-solid defense formation began to shake violently like a lone boat in a storm. Cracks spread rapidly on the shield like hideous scars, as if the entire defense formation would be completely broken in the next second. Su Fan's eyes condensed, and he instantly activated his demonic body. A thick black mist as thick as ink filled his whole body. The black mist suddenly boiled up, as if it was injected with a powerful energy, and rolled more and more violently. The demonic body also continued to grow under the impetus of this force, and in a blink of an eye, it had reached a height of hundreds of feet. Ouch! Su Fan's demonic body roared to the sky, and the sound seemed to come from the roar of the abyss of hell, and the evil power like a tide suddenly swept out. The surrounding air was distorted and deformed by this roar, as if the space could not withstand this powerful force. The sudden change in Su Fan's body also scared Xiao Ning next to him. She raised her head and looked at the huge demonic body that was hundreds of feet tall. Although she knew that this demonic body was Su Fan, she still couldn't help but shudder. Then, the huge demon body that Su Fan transformed into suddenly disappeared from her side, leaving only a residual image, as if he had never stayed there. When he appeared again, he was like a cannonball, rushing out of the inner city with endless power and determination, and slammed into the super wicker ghost outside. Boom! With a devastating roar, the entire Black Mountain base was shaken violently. Huge gullies appeared on the ground. The loud noise seemed to shatter the whole world, and the buildings in the base were also shaken and collapsed one after another, raising dust all over the sky, covering the sky and the sun. Chapter 1150 How could I miss this opportunity to beat the downtrodden dog? Su Fan slammed into the super willow ghost. What he didn't expect was that after the two huge demon bodies like mountains collided, there was no destructive scene like Mars hitting the earth as expected. The super willow ghost was actually hit by Su Fan and flew into the air, drawing a long arc in the air, and fell more than 10 miles away. It fell heavily on the ground like a falling meteorite, splashing dust all over the sky, as if a giant bomb exploded on the ground. Perhaps this super willow ghost merged too hastily, and the power in its body has not yet been fully coordinated and unified. Compared with the super killbone demon, its strength is much inferior. How could Su Fan miss this opportunity to beat the drowning dog? He exerted force with his right foot and stepped heavily on the ground. The huge demon body of hundreds of feet was wrapped in a terrifying momentum that frightened people to the bone marrow, and turned into a dazzling thunder, which swept across more than 10 miles in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the front of the willow ghost. At this moment, Su Fan's scalp suddenly went numb, and a strong sense of crisis arose from the bottom of his heart. He didn't even think about it and disappeared in an instant. Almost at the same time, a tentacle several feet thick, like a devil's hand stretched out from the nine nether hell, suddenly fell from the sky with an endless sense of oppression, and hit the place where Su Fan had just been with the force of thunder and lightning. Boom! The tentacle, like a 1,000-year-old withered vine, was wrapped in the power of destroying the world and smashed to the ground with a roar. In an instant, the earth seemed to be split by a giant axe, and a deep gully several miles long and bottomless was madly cracked from the ground. The land on both sides of the gully was like wheat waves blown by the wind, rolling to both sides. The earth-shaking sound of this blow seemed to shatter the whole world, and the land around the entire Black Mountain base was shaken violently. The rocks on the ground were like fragile glass, turning into powder, raising dust all over the sky, covering the sky and the sun. The tentacle that looked like a dead vine shook violently, as if it had life, and instantly split into dense tentacles like spirit snakes. These hideous tentacles twisted and rolled, carrying disgusting mucus, covering the sky and the sun, and enveloped Su Fan in the distance. Wherever they went, the air was twisted and deformed, as if the space was about to be torn apart by these tentacles. Facing this dense and hideous tentacles that were overwhelming and surging, Su Fan slashed with a sword without hesitation. I saw that the dark sword wrapped in the power of the positive pole and the thunder of heaven and earth, instantly burst into dazzling light, like a black lightning that tore the sky apart. The terrifying sword light crossed the sky, and the majestic sword force seemed to split the entire world in two. Under the impact of this powerful force, the surrounding air was shattered layer by layer, making a sharp whistling sound, as if countless wronged souls were wailing in pain. The terrifying sword intent unleashed a mighty force that shook the world, like a surging tide, sweeping over with overwhelming force. Wherever the sword light passed, everything was ruthlessly collapsed and destroyed. Deep gullies were plowed out of the earth, and ripples appeared in the void. The dense and ferocious tentacles that covered the sky and the earth were like fragile pieces of paper in front of this terrifying sword light, and were instantly chopped into pieces. With a roar of thunder and the burning of flames, the sword light, with a force that destroyed the world, instantly turned the dense tentacles that covered the sky and the sun into bloody and fleshy pieces, and the air was filled with a disgusting bloody smell. This terrifying sword force did not stop at all. A brighter sword light, as if condensed from the mysterious power deep in the universe, tore out from the void. With endless might, it cut through the sky, like a falling star, and slashed towards the huge body of the super wicker monster. The super wicker monster seemed to feel the threat of death, and the dense tentacles all over its body suddenly gathered in front of it. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a hideous tentacle several feet thick and like an ancient vine, blocking itself in front of it. The terrifying sword light whistled out from the void like a meteorite, with unparalleled power, easily tearing and piercing the tentacle several feet thick, like a hot knife cutting butter. Then, the sword light was still strong, and it slashed fiercely on the body of the wicker ghost. Puff! The terrifying sword light was like an indestructible blade, and it cut off half of the wicker ghost's body. Under this blow, the huge body of the devil, which was nearly 1,000 feet long, was chopped back and flew out, rolling several times in the air before falling heavily to the ground, raising a huge cloud of dust. Su Fan was just about to seize the opportunity to rush over and destroy the super willow monster in one fell swoop, but he didn't expect that the seemingly seriously injured willow monster would suddenly attack at this time. The ferocious tentacles like withered vines, like poisonous snakes drilling out from the ground, tightly wrapped around his body with lightning speed. The knocked-over willow monster took advantage of Su Fan's unpreparedness to launch a sneak attack, and the dense and ferocious tentacles kept wrapping around him repeatedly, wrapping tighter and tighter, as if to grind his body into meat paste. After a while, Su Fan was entangled by countless ferocious tentacles like withered vines into a cocoon and couldn't move. The huge power from those tentacles seemed to crush his bones inch by inch. Su Fan felt extremely painful all over his body, as if every inch of his skin was burned by fire. Ouch! Su Fan's bones were almost broken by the dense tentacles. He felt unbearable pain all over his body. He could no longer bear it and roared to the sky. This roar was full of anger and unwillingness, as if he wanted to roar out the injustice between heaven and earth. Then, he exerted all his strength, mobilized every bit of strength in his body, and with a bang, the dense tentacles wrapped around him were broken into pieces. Su Fan used his right foot as the axis and swung the sword in a full circle. At this time, the sword in his hand seemed to have become a symbol of destruction. The sword was wrapped in endless power, stirring up an endless hurricane of terror, and whistled through the body of the willow ghost with an overwhelming force. Puff! The nearly 1,000-foot-long super willow ghost was cut in half by this sharp sword, like fragile tofu. The moment it was cut off, its body instantly split into several small willow ghosts of more than 100 feet, and then fled in panic. Su Fan did not chase the fleeing willow ghosts, but came to the big demon that he had chopped down with a sword. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes, and he chopped it with a sword without hesitation. Puff! The black sword wrapped in the power of the positive pole and the thunder of heaven and earth fell from the sky. The nearly 1,000-foot super willow ghost was instantly cut into two pieces, and split into several small willow ghosts again and fled in all directions. However, as soon as these small willow ghosts fled, red flames ignited all over their bodies, and the flames were mixed with dense and dazzling electric currents, like agile little snakes, wandering on the demon bodies, crackling. These electric currents intertwined with the flames, constantly burning their demon bodies, causing them to struggle and twist in pain. Before they ran far, they fell to the ground one after another, struggled and twisted on the ground, and then stopped moving. After dealing with the two super willow ghosts, Su Fan disappeared from the spot. When he returned to the inner city again, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The two super snot monsters were now like two puddles of mud lying on the aura shield of the inner city defense formation. Their slimy bodies kept squirming, emitting waves of disgusting stench. In just a short while, the several aura shields that had been repaired had been mostly corroded by the two snot monsters. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.